Oh no, I forgot. Hello there.
Nice intro there.
Oh, hello there. Welcome to a certain point of view where we make great opening remarks here. Wow, so good.
Nice.
Oh man, I haven't done that yet. I usually am pretty on top of that beginning there.
It's okay. These last few minutes have been super rushed, so you're
Oh,
fine.
we had technical difficulties. We're off to a late start. Sorry about this, you guys. Thank you so much for joining us, though, if you're here in the chat. I know we got Jack already, General Kenobi, he says. What's up, Jack? And guys, if you're here in the chat with us, we really want to make sure that we know that you're here. So please let us know. Welcome to our Phantom Menace discussion. I'm really excited about this. Curry had this idea like over a month ago about like let's build up to Kenobi with some prequel episodes, and we were all just like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. And so yeah, we're gonna do this one this week. We're gonna do Attack of the Clones. The plan is to do Attack of the Clones next week and Revenge of the Sith the following week. You know, May the 4th is somewhere in there. And so who knows if we get some news, we might need to postpone one of them for a special episode.
I think we will.
Either that or they're saving it all for Celebration. I don't know. I don't know what's going on, but either way, we're going to do these 3 episodes. We're building up to Obi-Wan. We are literally just over a month away from Obi-Wan.
I can't wait.
I am so excited. Curry, dude, it's been a while since you've been on. How are you?
I'm great, man. Life's just been a little crazy. You know, I've kept up obviously with our chat and the planning and everything, but
Absolutely.
it's just going on. But I've been good, man. I have watched Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones in preparation, and started a rewatch of Clone Wars, and then fell off of that fairly fast. So I'll do what I can. But Revenge of the Sith, you know, I'm gonna rewatch that one. So,
Oh, what? No way. No. You?
yeah.
Dude, I'm excited. I've actually just rewatched The Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones within the last 3 or 4 weeks as well. So it's all very fresh in my mind, and I have the movie playing right next to me too, just to make sure I'm in the zone. But I'm really pumped.
That's why your internet was lagging.
What'd you say?
That's why the internet was lagging.
Oh my gosh, you're so right. I'm such an idiot. Maybe I should stop that.
No, maybe just pause it. You'll be good.
That's so funny, dude. I didn't even consider that for a second. Yeah, but anyway, dude, I'm pumped to have you on to talk about this. It's been a while since you've been on because life, but I think the last time you were on was when you were in this room, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, that was the last time.
Which was awesome. That in-person episode was so much fun.
There's a video standing by.
It's coming.
When I remember to upload it. I'm so sorry.
It's okay, man. Do you know someone tweeted about how they loved that episode today, and all I could think was the audio in that one was just so terrible. Even though it was like that was probably the most fun we've had on an episode, but it was that audio. I remember listening back and I was just like, I don't know if I can make it through this.
I can say, usually when I'm the one who gets disagreed with by the rest of you, it's a very different feeling when it's in the same room. Being on the other end, I was like, well, I'm just going to have to sound extra smart.
Hey, you know what? I don't feel like there was a whole lot of disagreeing. I loved that conversation. That whole conversation about like, should the creator be when should the creator stop messing with his creation? When should all that stuff? That was such a great discussion about it, and I think both sides were almost equally right, and I think my side was just a little more right, but that's just me about the special
You said
edition.
You were equally wrong? Is that what you said?
Right. Right.
In case y'all don't know, Michael and I have like a frenemy thing with Star Wars, but yeah, we're actually friends, I promise.
It's funny. It's like we find there are several things in Star Wars where you and I are like dead on with each other, but then there are several things where we are so far apart. It's crazy, and and I think that's just great for a podcast.
Because I'm a real fan, and you're
Fake
filthy
fan.
casual. Filthy
Hashtag fake
casual.
fan. That's me. I'm owning it at this point.
A filthy casual who started a podcast, but whatever.
Yeah, casual 20, 30-year fan, but whatever. It's all good.
Moving on. When I
Oh
don't know
man.
what to say, this is what I'm gonna do.
Hey. Oh, okay. I got Jar Jar coming with me today. What you gonna do now, Godzilla?
This isn't for you. This is for Drew.
Oh, Drew, we miss you. Speaking of which, we do have a video we're gonna play of Drew here in a minute.
That was meant to be a transition, but I forgot to tell you about it beforehand.
that would have been good, actually.
Yeah.
No, but so just so y'all know what we're gonna do tonight, we're gonna have this Phantom Menace discussion. I have one thing I want to talk about, just right off the top of our heads, really quick before we get going. But before we do that, just a little bit of housekeeping. I want to make sure you guys, if you are in the chat or if you are listening to this episode, I want to very humbly ask a favor of you. Please go rate and review our podcast. If you enjoy spending time with us in our content at all, we would be honored if you could, and if you haven't done it yet, we would be honored if you could go leave us a 5-star rating, or 1-star if you just hate us or whatever. But leave us a review. That would be great. That would mean the world to us, and it really does help the podcast when people leave those things. So if you could please do that wherever you were, like on Apple or Spotify, I think you can leave ratings now. So that would be great if you guys could do that. It would mean the world to us. And then also go follow us on Twitter. Go follow us on Facebook. We have a group and a page on Facebook. Go follow us on Instagram and on TikTok. All of those will be in the links below when we post this episode on the podcast. So I wanted to be sure I covered that stuff. Now, Curry, before we get started on the Phantom Menace discussion, there was a little bit of news that dropped today about Obi-Wan Kenobi. They have announced who the composer is going to be.
Oh, yes.
Because we knew that John Williams was going to do the theme.
Mm-hmm.
The theme, which is, I can't even believe, and I'm just over the moon excited about. But they had not announced who was going to be doing the score for the whole show. And I've been wondering who it's going to be. I think there's a lot of great, options for it. But today they announced that Natalie Holt, the composer of Loki, is going to be scoring this. And dude, I have to tell you, I am over the moon about this hiring. I think it's such a good call. If y'all listen to Loki's soundtrack, it is imaginative. It's I'm sure it will feel different than Obi-Wan, but just there's a lot of range in the Loki score. There's a lot of synth stuff, but there's also some incredible strings in there as well. And she's got real range, but she has this quality and creativity.
Words are hard.
Words are hard. But she has a creativity and a real original sound. And I think that, and she's the first female composer in Star Wars, which is awesome as well. So that's always a welcome thing.
That's wild too.
Yeah.
It's
First female composer and the first, no, I guess we've had female directors in the shows, but Deborah Chow's taken this whole show. So
yeah.
That hasn't happened before. So this is really cool, really unique.
Yeah.
And I think, dude, what was your thought? To me, this is a home run hire. I cannot wait to hear this score.
What's the quote? Oh gosh, I can't believe Drew's gonna be so mad at me. A surprise to be sure, but a welcome one.
Oh, but a welcome one, yeah.
There you go. Yeah, so I thought Loki had the most distinct music of the Disney Plus Marvel show so far. So that makes me excited because kind of like what you were talking about, there's a lot of uniqueness in the Loki soundtrack. And if she approaches all of her scores like that,
yeah,
you can make something very Star Wars and still make it very unique. Mandalorian is a great example of that.
Oh, yes.
So I'm excited to see what she does. It has the most memorable music to me. So I think it's kind of not an out of left field hire, but just I didn't see that coming. So obviously if Lucasfilm hires you, like music wise, you have a good track record. You have a good history. So that's exciting for me. Yeah.
Yeah, man, it like you said, it's out of left field is not quite the right term, but
Yeah.
it was not an option I thought about. I never even once considered Natalie Holt should do a Star Wars thing, but now that I think of it, it's like, whoa, yes, I love this option. So I'm super pumped to see that. Like, it's like every time that I think I can't get more excited about this show, they announce something new, and
Dude.
I'm just like, okay, well, now they're just messing with me at this point. So
Yeah.
I'm so excited about this. What do y'all think in the chat about this Natalie Holt hiring? And have you even heard of her? Have you even watched Loki? But for me, the music was a huge standout in Loki, and so I'm extremely excited. Also, the score is great to just listen to. Not all scores, sometimes when you listen to a score, it's like, this is way better when you watch the thing. But this is good both ways, in my opinion. This is excellent to just listen to. Great vibes. All right. So, with that done, let's get into our discussion on the Phantom Menace. So, dude, okay, well, let's just get this stuff out of the way. The Phantom Menace came out in 1999, directed and written by George Lucas. 1999, I was 10
I was
or 9 or 10. Depends on the month.
5.5 when it came out.
Oh man, that's so crazy. This is the one that unfortunately, I never got to go see one of the special editions in the theater. I did not get to do that, which some special edition fans have.
I actually did. All but Return of the Jedi.
So jealous of you.
Ironic, isn't it?
Ironic. I did. Like, I really wish that I could have had that experience, but my first Star Wars theatrical experience was this movie, The Phantom Menace. And I remember I was so excited. I remember being just so pumped, and I didn't know anything about it, honestly. Like, I didn't know what to expect. I was 9. I didn't think about this stuff super in depth. I was just excited to go see a new Star Wars movie, and I just remember loving it right away.
Yeah.
And I am one of the ones. We will have different departing journeys, but eventually coming back together here. But I am one of the ones that grew up and realized, you know what? These prequel movies suck. And I grew up and I was like, the prequel movies aren't Star Wars. Blah, blah, blah. Like, the original trilogy or original trilogy is all I need and all that stuff. I was totally one of those guys, and I'm actually ashamed of it to this day. I used to be one of those when I was younger. And dude, I gotta say, I'm trying to think of when the turnaround started to happen, but I think it was really within the years of the sequel trilogy. I think when really The Force Awakens came out in 2015 and reinvigorated my love for Star Wars. I've always loved it. There's no doubt about that. But when you don't have any new movies coming out, you don't have any new shows coming out really. Rebels was going, but I had no way to watch it. I didn't do Disney XD at the time, and so I was really not watching or consuming any new Star Wars, which is really weird to think about now. But yeah, so for me, The Force Awakens came out, and I just started consuming some of the old Star Wars again, and then I started watching the Clone Wars, and I think the Clone Wars helped too. The Clone Wars really helped, even though the Clone Wars is after the Phantom Menace. It helped me put into context the whole context of the Clone Wars in general in the prequel era. And I do think that I think I'm not alone. I think there's a lot of people who the Clone Wars definitely helped with that. Yeah. But with this movie in particular, and really all three of the prequels, once I started, I rewatched them again, and this movie has just clawed its way up, man. Like up my rankings. There's something I have gained an appreciation for all three of them, even if Attack of the Clones is still way down at the bottom of my list. Attack of the Clones, even like all three movies, I really can say I appreciate all of them for different reasons, and I can find a whole list of great things about all of them. And I can definitely find flaws in all of them as well. But I genuinely do. When it comes to the Phantom Menace, man, I'm so happy to say I've turned around on this movie because there are things about it that'll drive me crazy, and I'll talk about them tonight. I'm not just sunshine and rainbows about this movie.
Yeah.
But I genuinely love this movie, and it is one of my most rewatched Star Wars movies. I would say, I even tweeted this last night, Return of the Jedi is by far and away, not even a close second, my most rewatched Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
I would say a close second would probably be, I'm just kind of guessing right now, I think The Phantom Menace might be a close second. I really do. I've watched it that many times as a kid and now as an adult. And so
probably for a lot of people, because a lot of people, it's their first one they start with on like a rewatch, and then they like get busy and don't finish the rewatch.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about myself here at all.
Of course
so,
not.
Yeah. There's something that's very, despite the political stuff, it's a very digestible movie. It's very easy to just like watch and like kind of, if you want to pay attention to it, great. If you don't want to pay attention to it, it's a good background movie.
Yep.
It's a lot of fun. I don't want to interrupt what you were saying though. So.
No, I was coming to a close, man, but I was just gonna say, like, for me, this movie has very high highs. Like when this movie is really humming, it's really humming.
Yeah.
And then when this movie is not so good, it's not so good. And you know, I do have some issues we'll talk about, but overall, I really love this movie, and I love what it does for Star Wars. I love seeing the beginning of, you know, the rise of Palpatine, Darth Sidious. I love seeing just like these little hints in there that I can't believe I didn't notice as a kid.
Yeah.
Like, you know, as a kid, I didn't know anything. I didn't know that was Palpatine when I was watching the movie. I didn't like, I knew his name was Palpatine, but I didn't know that was the Emperor.
You know, it's actually funny you say that, because I was going to talk about that. That's a good transition. So I remember, so I was like 5 when it came out. I hadn't even started kindergarten yet, right?
Yeah.
So I was like the perfect age for this movie. I couldn't have told you what the trade disputes were. I don't know if I still can tell you what the trade disputes are, but the pod race, the lightsaber duels, the world building, the stunts, I was entranced. Now I grew up with the original trilogy throughout. You know, I was born in '93, so I had already seen them all at that point. But there was something about this being the first theater experience I remember, even though it wasn't my first. And I want to be careful in saying it changed my life. But like, I remember getting Darth Maul lightsabers for Christmas. My brother collected all like the collectible like drinking glasses you could get, like all of the tie-in material, the video games that tied into Episode 1. We had all those things. So this movie was like, it was a staple in our house, and we wore out the VHS tape. And one of the big things after seeing it is, I remember my dad, we were watching at home. I don't remember the specific time because we wouldn't have talked in the theater, because I didn't notice that stuff either. My dad was like, "Oh yeah, it's cool to see how the Emperor is like planning all this." And we were like, "What? It's not the Emperor." And he's like, "It's the same actor from Return of the Jedi." And we were like, "Oh, it's the Emperor. Cool." And my friends, when I got to Episode 3, I said, it's going to be cool to see how Palpatine like takes control of the galaxy. They're like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "He's Sidious." And they're like, "No, he's not." They didn't know. Because like in 2005-ish, when like late elementary school, pre-internet age, like before it really got big anyway. So it was just wild to think about that. I was like, how do you guys not know? And so when I was right, I was like, yeah, told y'all.
Yeah.
But yeah, seeing those seeds planted, and if y'all can't tell by this point, I love this movie too. It is one of those ones that it is the only Star Wars movie I've probably gone, the sequels aside, gone a little up and down with in the past couple of years. I watched it with a friend probably 2 or 3 years ago, who hadn't seen it since it came out in theaters, and he hated it. And kind of watching it with him and experiencing with him, it brought it down a little bit for me. But then in every subsequent rewatch, I have bumped it back up a little bit more each time. And it's not perfect. I have my little squabbles with it that are a little tough to get by. But honestly, each time I watch it, I care less because the good stands out to me more. And I'm a very large proponent of always look for the good. And I grew up defending these movies. I think the good far outweighs the bad. I go back and forth as well on like placing it in my overall ranking and within the prequels. Um, I wish I had it higher than I do in my current ranking, but it's where it fits comfortably. And just because it's somewhat lower on the list doesn't mean I don't love it and appreciate it for the vast amount that it did for the saga and for my childhood.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, my ranking between the 6th and the 9th spot, they can literally change on a daily basis. Like one day, The Force Awakens will be my number 6, and then the next day it'll be my number 9 because I'm like, no, Solo. And then, or The Phantom Menace. The Phantom Menace is one that's constantly like, no, I'm number 6 or I'm number 7.
Yeah.
And, this movie really is one that has just clawed its way. It's such a scrappy little movie. I say little. This movie is huge. It's a scrappy movie, and it's just absolutely won't leave me alone. And I love that. It is one of the movies, like, there have been several times. It's so funny. I'll buy, like, when I bought this shelf back here, and I was like, okay, I'm going to set this up in the living room. I need to put it all together. I want to put on a Star Wars movie while I do this. I think I'll put on the Phantom Menace. And then I got another piece of furniture, and I did the same thing with the Phantom Menace. And so I don't know, like, it's just one of those movies. Like you said, you just put it on, and it's comfort food, and the highs are super high. And when it's on, and it's so fun, and then but you don't have to follow the plot. You don't have to be like super zoned in. So
yeah. Right.
But man, okay, so this movie, I want to talk about let's just talk about the things that what are our favorite things about this movie, and we can go deeper too if you want to. Like
Sure.
there's obviously some thematic things that we can talk about, but I definitely just want to talk a lot, and then we can definitely talk. Actually, let's talk about let's talk about our qualms first, because I want to get those. Let's get those out of the way, and then we'll just spend the rest of the time.
Sure.
So for me, okay, I think by far for me, there are a few things that just stand above the rest, and then there's some things that I can just scooch. I can just ignore them, whatever. But there are some things that just every time I'm like, man, I just wish this was better. And one of the things is right out of the gate, dude, the accents of the Trade Federation, or of the
Dude, honestly, that doesn't even bother me.
I'm blanking on his name. I'm not
New
going
Gunray.
to do it.
New
New Gunray.
Gunray.
Yeah, thank you. New Gunray. The accent of him and his partner there. There
are two of them.
Now there are two of them. It's so hilarious.
Oh wait, that's Attack of the Clones. My bad. That was the wrong movie. Wait,
No, which one?
wait. Now there are two of them.
No. That's this one. No,
It
that's
is?
definitely this one. Right at the beginning of the movie.
Okay.
Because it was when they found out that there's not only is there Sidious, but there's also Maul. Maul shows up in the hologram
That's what it
behind.
is. I was
He's like-
confusing that with
Yeah.
She got to do that. Someone shoot her. Or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, so that's pretty, that's pretty rough.
Dude, honestly, it doesn't even faze me. Like,
Yeah.
it's I get it, but
it's
I
one of
don't
those
care.
things, every time I start the movie, I get used to it as it goes. But it's at the beginning, I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot. I always forget. And then I was like, oh yeah, here we go. The voices.
It's like Star Wars aliens have always like talked. I don't want to say talk funny because that sounds weird, but like uniquely, I guess. So it's
Alien
like,
racist.
I was trying to avoid that. I was like, do I need to be sensitive here?
No, you can't offend those aliens. No, dude, it is probably an insensitive accent, but it's also just something that, it was 1999.
I
And
think the only thing about it that bugs me is the lip syncing doesn't work quite as well as I thought it did as a kid.
yeah, it doesn't. And at the time, George was just thinking I want these aliens to sound different than the other races. And so, it's not good, but it is what it is. And honestly, that is the least of my, to be honest. I have issues mainly. I think the politics in this are actually pretty interesting, and I think politics has always been a part of Star Wars, so that's not an issue. I'm not like
I have a bullet
politics.
point about that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm excited to hear your thoughts there. I think for me, I'm not one of those guys that's like, I don't want any politics in my Star Wars. But I do think some of the stuff in this movie is a little bit muddy and it's a little bit hard to follow, and it's just at certain points it is boring. And so I love seeing the inside of the Senate, and I love all that stuff. But there's just all of there's a lot of meetings happening. We're just watching it. The camera is just sitting still while we're watching a meeting. And I'm just like, I get why people get bored with this stuff. Cause I am a little bit, to be honest. And so I think to me, that is probably one of my bigger issues with the movie. What do you think about, obviously, like I said, again, don't take that the wrong way. I actually like the politics in the prequels and in Star Wars, period.
Yeah.
I think it's hugely important. Like, you can't have the rise of Palpatine without the politics. So, but I do think there are times where I'm like, they could have done this a little better.
Yeah. So first off, how dare you suggest pacing is an issue? I'm just kidding. Michael used to make fun of me for complaining about pacing.
I didn't say pacing.
3 consecutive weeks in our chat, I complained about pacing in several different movies, and he's like, "Pacing's always an issue." So I'm like, "Oh gosh, trigger word!" Anytime he says it now. But you didn't say it, but you said it. But yeah, so I get that one too. So I really like the political intrigue in the movie. It was something that as a kid flew right over my head. I didn't really know what it meant. The older I get, the more I appreciate it actually, and notice more story details being told through it. It's not one of the pacing issues for me. It is, this is one of the slower moving Star Wars movies. And I don't think that's just necessarily the fault of this plot point. I think sometimes there's just too much going on. There's too much cross-cutting between planets and different things going on, too much happening with some other things I'll get to later. But now, knowing what we know about Palpatine and where it goes, and seeing the Clone Wars and seeing how it sets everything up and how he manipulates everything, and how just using this tiny little trade dispute to really starting to set off the Clone Wars. Like, honestly, I'm going to ask you this question. I'm going to ask this again when we do our Attack of the Clones. Why did the Clone Wars start?
Why did the Clone Wars start? So
I was never able to answer that question. Like, honestly, it's still kind of a question that's hard to answer because we don't really see that.
Yeah.
By the time we get to Attack of the Clones, they're on the brink of it. But it's all because of what happens in Phantom Menace.
Yeah.
A trade dispute with the Republic and the corporations that really control the Separatists.
Yep.
Get mad because the Trade Federation can't do what it wants to do, the blockade and the disputes with the Senate. And the Senate takes too long to help this world, so then people want to secede from all that, and that just boils over 10 years until it breaks out into conflict in Attack of the Clones. So really, when you realize how important it is and how much groundwork and world building is being done, it doesn't bother me anymore. Are the scenes sometimes drier than others? Yes, but I think that's more of a performance thing rather than a writing thing. And that, can I transition here? Is that okay?
Yeah, please.
Natalie Portman in this movie is so wooden. All of her lines, all of her delivery. I love her in the next 2 movies, but in this one particularly, I don't know what it is. She's endearing to a point, but she says everything's so dry, like this. It doesn't blink. It just gives you this soft stare.
Yeah.
And it's just, and a lot of her political speeches and things like that, I don't feel like are the impassioned Padme that we see later on. So it's, that is my probably biggest struggle with those scenes in particular. In probably why they come across a little slower and drier than others.
Oh, hold on. This is huge. H2 is in here. No, you are not banned, H2. You are here. This is the first time. For those of you who don't know, H2, man, it's so good to have you in here, dude. I'm so glad that you're here. So
Michael doesn't hate you anymore.
No, okay. So there was this one time we were getting spammed in the comment section, and I blocked them, but for some reason it accidentally blocked the comment or the person who was above that, which was H2. I don't know how it happened. I might have accidentally clicked it. I don't know what happened, but I accidentally banned H2. And I had the hardest time unbanning him. I don't know YouTube very well, so I had the hardest time figuring it out. Finally did. H2 says 2 months, and actually it was about 3 weeks ago that I finally figured it out. So we just haven't had a live stream in a while. But dude, it's so good to have you back in here. I'm so sorry, but I've apologized 100 times at this point. But I am glad that you're here, H2. But okay. So moving back to the Phantom Menace, dude. Okay, so about Natalie Portman, I see what you're saying. I think part of that was because if you look at her at the end of the movie, she is the Padme we see later on. Whenever she's talking when she's talking to the Gungans, making that impassioned speech.
But it's not impassioned. It's super,
I disagree.
It's super wooden delivery. Like
in that speech,
she says everything in the same monotonous voice the entire movie. It is my biggest pet peeve with the movie by far.
Interesting. So like for me, I view it as she is still trying to kind of remain a quiet servant, like that's what she wants to act. And so she is kind of on the more quiet and monotone side. She's not trying to stand out at all. And so to me it makes sense. And then whenever she is her persona as the queen is much more regal and blah, I will not let our people blah blah blah. And I feel like her persona there is meant to be that. And then, but to me, that shell comes off when she is having that speech to, I always forget I'm so bad with names, but I always forget the leader of the Gungans. The leader of the Gungans, when she's talking to him, I feel that passion. I do think she grows as an actor as the series goes on. I think that she's great in the next two. I see what you're saying with some of the other stuff, like when she's, but even when I think about her talking to Anakin in the shop, I think she's super endearing. I don't feel like she's wooden at all when she's talking to little Anakin.
Yeah, and I probably should be careful generalizing for the whole movie and things like that. But for a large portion of, especially the Queen portions, and then like that portion with the Gungan general or leader, king, whatever his name is, I don't know, man. I really struggled with her performance in that one.
H2 says it was Sheev.
It's funny because in our chat, Josh Mesker is Sheev.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is. But yeah, totally. I get what you're saying. I don't think I'm quite there with you, but I do see what you're saying to some degree for sure.
I don't want to call it a bad performance because I think part of it was George's directing
and writing. Some of the dialogue, man.
It's not. I don't think the dialogue in this one has as many rough spots as Attack of the Clones. Personally,
it does not. It does not. No.
But I do think a good portion of the performance is like he didn't push for like the better take at times.
Yeah,
which is consistent for the trilogy,
except
for Revenge of the Sith because it's perfect. But I'm just kidding. No, even there's a couple lines in that where I'm like, yeah, could have done that one a little better.
No, but it's because I'm so in love with you.
I talk to my wife like that, so that really don't bother me. If you're watching this, babe, I love you.
Okay, let's go next to my next thing. This kind of leads right into that. Is some of the dialogue. I do feel like some of the dialogue is pretty rough, and I think that the dialogue is a big reason why some of the performances do seem a little bit wooden. Even from, like you said, I think Natalie Portman, I get what you're saying to some degree, for sure. I see what you're saying. And then even Mace Windu, who is played by Academy Award winner Samuel L. Jackson.
He's like weirdly off in this one to me.
He is off. And, I think his character is more stern. And I think to some degree, he's supposed to be kind of like that. But I think that in general, I do think that some of the actors, even like great actors that are in this movie, are just not, they don't appear to be great actors. Now, I will say the Phantom Menace does have some real winners in the acting column. Like, and we will get to those.
I mean, we both are thinking of the obvious one.
Well, there's obvious ones. There are a couple of obvious ones, but I think that I might even have a couple that aren't ones that people usually bring up. But I do think in general some of the dialogue is a little bit wooden, and that, you know, it's wooden, or it's just not quite. It's a little bit expository at times.
It's very straightforward and on the nose.
Like
But
there's one line that one guy, again, so bad with some of these names, but that one guy on Naboo, he's one of the Naboo politicians, and they're on Naboo in that room talking, and he's like, oh crap, what's the line? I knew it until I was just about to say it.
I do that all the time.
But he's basically that line where he's like, communications are interrupted. Communication interruption can only mean one thing: invasion. And I'm like, could actually mean a whole lot of things, I think. But okay.
It's so funny you say that, because I actually really like that guy, like his acting.
No, I like him. I don't think he's the
I feel
problem.
like his line delivery brings like gravitas. It's so funny. That line, I think, was used in one of the trailers, and it was also used in one of the clips in the video game that I played over and over and over. And whenever I did, I was like, oh man, that sweet level's coming. Like, I don't know. So I associate good things with that line. It's just funny how like that one doesn't even like phase me like at all.
It's not one that super phases me either, but it's one example of a line that's like trying to make something of push the plot forward with this one line.
Right.
But also at the same time, I'm like, yeah, but that could mean a lot of things. It's not. How did you just jump straight to invasion? I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. But yeah, so
it can only mean one thing: Taco Tuesday.
I don't know. Maybe that's not a viable option. Do they do Taco Tuesdays on Naboo?
Naboo tacos? That sounds...
Nachos.
Taboos? Tabucos?
Nachos. I don't know.
Sorry.
But yeah, so that's I have one other major issue with this movie, but what about you with the dialogue or any of that I just mentioned?
Just looking, I mean, my three, like, major complaints were, like, some of the wooden acting, especially Portman's. And I had noted here that the screenplay didn't win any awards. It shouldn't. It's very straightforward on the nose, but it's not bad per se. And we talked about the pacing already, and I did note this last time. It's not as bad as I remember. There's actually a good bit of action. There's just really long gaps. For this to be targeted at children, there's a lot of
downtime.
Well, not just downtime, but really high level, like political intrigue, like plot point stuff going on. That's why I don't always buy that Lucas says that these movies are for kids. I mean, in Revenge of the Sith, you have him murdering kids. So, like, you're murdering your target audience. How's that supposed to make them feel? So, like, but that being said,
I've never thought about that.
I think what I have noted here, I'm just going to read this because I don't know if I can word it better now. This is from my review I wrote a little bit ago, but I said, we'll see if I still agree with myself. The biggest issue I have is a shortage of emotional storytelling, which is present all throughout the original trilogy. There's glimpses of it, such as Qui-Gon's like warmth throughout the movie and his death, Anakin's goodbye to his mother, and his funeral. So it's not that it's not there. They're just interspersed, and it doesn't make it absent, but we don't really know about the inner feelings of most of these characters, how they feel, really, other than Anakin at a few points. They tell us a lot, but they don't really show it as much. There's supposed to be the sense of urgency on Naboo, but we're only told of the suffering. We don't see people suffer. We see people talking about it in rooms. So I think some of that is why I don't connect to it as much on an emotional level. But whenever Qui-Gon's on screen, I do, if that makes sense. Like Obi-Wan, especially in this film, with the exception of when Qui-Gon dies, he's kind of a jerk, actually, throughout most of it. He questions everything Qui-Gon does. He's not nice to Jar Jar. He's really not nice to Anakin. He calls him a pathetic life form. So there's your foreshadowing for the trilogy. But yeah, that's kind of my thing. And there's another one. I feel like that's going to be a whole other section, so I'll save that one.
Cool.
I think you probably know what it is.
I don't actually know. I don't know where you're going with this. But no, I get that. I think you are right on as far as some of the lack of emotional weight. Like the next one has a ton of emotional weight.
Yes.
Like holy crap.
I can't wait till we talk about it.
Yeah, I think that's going to be great. Like seriously, one of the more like brutal things in the entire saga is in the next one when
Mhm.
Anakin's mom dies and he like slaughters a village. Like rough, man. And so, there's nothing quite on that level in this one, but
Mhm.
I do find quite a bit of small stuff. And to me, the second act where they're on Tatooine, I think that whole part is just filled with great little things, seeing how it made me feel emotional seeing Anakin at his most innocent stage and
Yeah.
at the point where he was saying, "Mom, you always tell us that the biggest problem with this world is that nobody helps each other." And he wants to, and what he's trying to do is go help these people who need help.
Mhm.
And like that really gets me kind of emotional thinking about what Anakin eventually becomes and seeing him in this way, and thinking about that just as an overall theme in Star Wars. At the very end in Star Wars, everyone does help each other in the Rise of Skywalker. And
Yeah. That's good.
which is a moment that on one hand I think they might have overdone it a little bit with the amount of ships. Um, but on the other hand, is beautiful. It's a beautiful moment because it does bookend. I can't remember who brought that up. Someone has brought that up to me, and I thought it was a great point. So, whoever it is, thank you for that point. It is a great bookend. It's Anakin is saying the biggest problem that in this world is that nobody helps each other, and throughout Star Wars, a theme is help each other. When you look at Ahsoka,
Mhm.
Ahsoka cannot not help someone
Yeah.
in need, and I could point to so many Hera, and like there are so many
I
great
think
examples of this all throughout.
Kenobi's going to pick up on that too. I mean, the trailer's like the Jedi's number one weakness is
Yes,
like their compassion. So
absolutely, yes. Oh
and
man, I
so
cannot wait to see that stuff.
so yeah, and Anakin is actually one of my favorite parts of the Phantom Menace.
Me
Jake
too.
Lloyd did not deserve
Amen, dude.
like a dude. I actually read like his full like a full breakdown of everything that happened recently,
Oh
and I've
god.
done it before. And it actually now that I'm a dad,
Mm.
it makes me like really upset. One, who in their right mind thought it was okay for him to do 60 interviews a day? Who he got bullied at school. Like I just feel like there were so many warning signs where people could have stepped in, where even George Lucas could have stepped in and like really helped this kid out on his journey. And now like he's supposedly doing better. But anyway, if you haven't read about what's happened to him, I encourage you to do so and um, pray for him and make a post. I don't know. I don't know what he sees when he does.
And maybe don't cyber bully people on the
Yeah,
internet.
yeah. And
That
like
would be
be
great.
careful how you when you criticize intelligently. Don't attack a person
Yeah.
because it changed his life and it ultimately somewhat ruined his life how that happened
I'm on
because he
best as
was
well.
yeah I'm my best as well and I'll get to him in just a minute but it's just sad man
Yeah, man.
because
I get you.
Anakin Jake Lloyd to me in all of his movies I love Jingle All the Way it's one of my favorite Christmas movies I love it so
Turbo
much
Man.
it's turbo
That
time
was a terrible Arnold. That's like the worst impression of all time. What mine, not yours. Um,
I love it but anyway he's just such a honestly, if he had stayed with acting, I think he would have been huge because he is so earnest in his portrayals. He's just so innocent. And some people think he's like too kiddish, but I'm like, he's a 9-year-old kid in a sci fi universe
yeah.
who is a slave and still manages to be this beacon of hope and positivity, which is super ironic, which is why that poster for Phantom Menace is so amazing with the
Oh my
shadow being
gosh.
Darth Vader. One
So
of the best
good.
posters in Star Wars. But he is whenever he interacts with Qui-Gon, that connection they have, that's what I latch onto in the movie. And then sometimes it just evaporates so quickly in all the other scenes that or you have Jar Jar kind of jumping in on what's going on. So it is there. I'm not saying there's not emotional depth to it. I'm just saying it's more interspersed and in some of the instances we're told about it through dialogue than told about it through performance.
Yeah.
And I'm not speaking about Anakin and Qui-Gon here. I'm speaking about kind of the rest of what's going on, because they're obviously the two highlights. I think Shmi Skywalker does a really good job too, and her
She's so
her
great.
mom. I can't remember the actress's name at the moment, but
I can't either.
Yeah. So
yeah, I totally agree. Dude, we'll talk about more. We're obviously naturally starting to lean into all the things we love, but one more thing. This is probably my least favorite thing about the movie, and I've talked about this before. We just have to do it one more time.
I think I know what you're going to say.
Yeah, you do. The end of the movie, the third act, it absolutely kills me that the entire droid versus Gungans battle and the space battle going on in space is won on accident. And you can explain it away if you want to, like you can sometimes in Star Wars, and it's totally fine, by saying, well, he used the Force. He didn't know how he was using the Force, but he used the Force, like he did when he was pod racing.
Anakin, yes. Jar Jar, no.
Oh, no. I'm saying only Anakin, because what Anakin did, but what Anakin did, oh, don't you dare. What Anakin did was he that affected the ground battle, right? Because it turned the droids off and all that stuff. So
yeah,
all of that
trope actually, where you destroy the mothership and all the enemies die. The Avengers did that, which I hated, by the way.
Yeah, they did that, and so did Independence Day, which I love.
Oh, I guess that was first, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it's a trope. It's a trope for sure. But I will. But it drives me crazy because especially the second act was so good. There was so much buildup in that. You had the pod racing. You had this threat of Darth Maul, and obviously there is a part in the third act that is amazing, and we'll talk about that with Darth Maul. But the anticlimactic nature of Anakin accidentally figuring this thing out, and accidentally he's like, oops, I'll try a spin move. That's a good trick. And then he lands in the hangar and accidentally shoots the gun, and it goes off, and it just, it turns because that ship is blowing up. It turns off the droids on the ground, and the Gungans win that battle on accident because of that. And then Jar Jar's on the ground accidentally killing people or killing droids left and right. And so much of that is all just so accidental, and so it drives me absolutely insane that that's how they decided to end the big climactic part of the movie. And so that's probably my least favorite thing. It's the one part of the movie that I probably actually really I can say I almost hate that.
I do honestly get that. I think two things. One, as a kid, the Anakin part I thought was absolutely amazing. I'm like, I can't believe a kid is doing this. I would react the same way.
Yeah.
He'd never been to space by himself before.
Sure.
I think maybe they could have toned it down a little bit, but really I think the larger culprit is just it's too many happy accidents, right?
That's what it is for me. That's all it is.
Yeah. And for me, and this, I just thought of this, and I thought of actually experimenting with this and see if I could come up with an edit that fixes it. But then I'm like, I'm not George Lucas. I have no right to do that, but I do it anyway. So they should have taken a page out of The Hobbit for Jar Jar's battle. Jar Jar, the whole movie, is a bit of a coward. He's a bit of a scaredy cat. He doesn't do well with that. And then in the end, he steps up to help fight. So I can see the arc that they were trying to make. What they could have done is kind of had him be cowardly and hide for most of that battle. And he gets knocked out and misses most of it or something. That would have been hilarious. And then you actually get to see the battle. You get to see you get to see them losing. And then if he wakes up and he says, I'm going to help.
Yeah.
And then the only thing he does is that accidental tank thing. And one accident throughout the whole battle, and they crash, and then they get surrounded. And then it's they start to lose. I think that would have been better versus this accident. Jar Jar does this, then this, then this, and this. And he does all these accidents while also cross-cutting to Anakin, who's having all these accidents. So turn Jar Jar's way down and maybe focus Anakin's a little bit more, make it a little bit more intentional seeming. Because he obviously went to space purposefully. He did do some cool stuff. I'm gonna be 100% honest. Anakin's doesn't really bother me. It doesn't bother me in the sense I get it, and I get it in the sense of it's too many accents. Had it been the sole like slightly comedic one in the larger scheme of things, or if when he got in the ship it had gotten like serious really quickly, like they raised the stakes in a better way with the editing and performance and all, I think it probably could have fixed it for a lot of people and would be even better for me. Yeah. But Anakin's, I don't know, man. I don't know what it is. I just kind of enjoy it. Yeah. The ground battle I struggle with. And the biggest thing is there is so much cross-cutting between the 4 battles.
Yeah.
There's 4. People often only think of it as 3. But you've got...
Even now I'm thinking of it that. But there, yeah, you're right. There's the part in the city.
Yeah, the part in the city, which
I love that part.
Yeah, that part's great. So you've got a 50% like super serious Duel of the Fates, because they use Duel of the Fates during that part too, on the ground. Then you've got a comedic in space, which is also like a little tonally confused because you have pilots blowing up while Anakin's doing spin moves. So, and then you have the ground battle. So if they had gone like, okay, Anakin starts serious, or Anakin starts comedic and gets serious. Jar Jar starts serious and then gets just a little comedic before getting like, oh gosh, they're all going to die. And then the other 2 are like super serious. I think it would have been balanced. Because that's, I believe, the part where George Lucas says, I may have gone a little too far in places. When you watch like in Empire of Dreams, or not Empire of Dreams, but in one of the ones he talks about, the behind the scenes.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of my thing where I think you have a completely valid criticism. I know when we've talked with Josh about it, that's kind of something he hits on too. It doesn't bother me as much as it does some people. And the ground battle actually bothers me more than the space battle does.
Yeah.
I also love the new Starfighters, so that's probably part of it.
I love the Starfighters too. Honestly, it's not even him flying around and doing a spin, spinning. That's a good trick. None of that stuff super bothers me because it makes sense that the ship that he would accidentally start to fly it on autopilot. All that's fine. You can explain that away enough. My problem is that it affects everything. Like that accidental one thing with the shot when he shoots the ship from the inside.
It should have made it intentional. Like
that affects everything. And so dude, it's set up that Anakin's a great pilot. I can go there with Anakin using the Force, not knowing that he's using the Force, but purposefully flying and like somehow figuring. I don't know. I could have bought it if he actually did do that on purpose. And it drives me crazy that that explodes, and then because of that happy mistake, that because of that, then the ground battle is also won. So all of this is just won on accident, essentially, and so it does bother me.
And anyway. they could have, I think, easily. Anakin goes to space on accident, and he's like trying to figure out the spaceship, does the spin thing, blah blah blah. Mm-hmm. But then the chance for Anakin, because we know Anakin from Clone Wars, Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith, he thinks outside of the box when it comes to military strategy. While all the pilots getting blown up, he could have been like, R2, let's fly into the main like hangar bay, and they go in there instead of him being like, what's this do? And presses the torpedoes. He could have been like, R2, fire the main cannon torpedoes or something. Yeah. And like make it to where like Anakin's brilliance comes in and he does it purposefully, and then that would have made everything else happening. Like
they've already set up that he's super smart.
Yeah. So dude, I totally feel you there. I actually think that would have been infinitely better. So.
But yeah, so we could talk about that stuff all day or whatever. But at the end of the day, it's really 2 major things that I have issues with.
Sure.
A lot of the dialogue, and then that part, the finale of it, how it all ends. Now, let's talk about some things we love. Because did you have any more criticisms you want to talk about before we go?
I've got one that's half and half, so this might be a good transition.
Perfect. Go ahead. You do your criticism, and then go into the positive about it.
I love my transitions.
Yeah, you do. I love how you like call out the transition, so we all know it's a transition.
Yeah. Well, you can edit them out later because we have 0 people watching right now.
I think H2 is lurking on YouTube.
Okay.
I'm so glad H2. I'm so glad you're here, man.
It should say that he's live up there. I don't know why it doesn't.
I know, but I don't know. We'll see.
He's invisible. Sorry. Jar Jar. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about Jar Jar. Mm-hmm. That should be the name of a documentary. That would be a great documentary, actually.
About Jar Jar and Ahmed Best?
Yeah, let's call it "Let's Talk About Jar Jar" instead of "Let's Talk About Kevin."
We don't talk about Jar Jar.
Sorry, that got me more than I thought it would. Um, I like Jar Jar. Jar Jar has always been. I knew you were going to do that. Jar Jar has always been very endearing to me. I loved him as a child. As I get older, I get the complaints more. And I can definitely say, and I wrote this in my review, I said Jar Jar is overused and he should have been dialed back and toned down across the board. Like unanimously, he's used way too much for comedic relief. Anytime there's like this random serious conversation happens, he eats an apple or he sticks his head in the pod racing thing and gets numb, or he gets farted on by that camel thing. But there's also times where he's actually a little bit funny. Like he's actually pretty funny. He makes me laugh. He's not that bad, and kids love him for a reason. I just think that they focused too heavily on him being the comedic relief, and it wasn't the type of comedic relief that Star Wars was used to. Yes, you had C-3PO and R2-D2 that were kind of the bumbling slapstick, but it was more witty because we don't know what R2-D2 says. Han Solo and Leia going back and forth is like super like witty dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
Jar Jar is more bumbling Three Stooges type, which can work really, really well. But it's such a tonal departure from everything else going on in the film that it can be off-putting. At the same time, I think they course corrected a little bit too much in the later films where you hardly see him, and he's got still a nice role in Attack of the Clones, in my opinion.
They gave him the old Rose Tico treatment.
Yeah, honestly, that's what they did.
Unfortunately,
they overcorrected. But I am sympathetic to the fact that he is overused, even if I like him more than most people.
yeah. You said something, and it's funny how sometimes we intersect, and sometimes we're going like the exact opposite trajectories. Because I used to absolutely despise Jar Jar as a kid.
I was curious.
I liked him as a kid. When I was 9, I liked him. As I got to be a teenager, I was like, Jar Jar's stupid. And, I was always definitely a hater. Like I said earlier, when I didn't like the movies, I was also, Jar Jar was a big reason why.
Yeah.
And, dude, I don't know if it's just because, I don't know if just because I try to look more at the good now, or if I genuinely have just had a change of heart. But, you're absolutely right. Like you brought up a great example. They're talking about like slavery and like, how nobody helps each other anymore. And Jar Jar's like trying to eat an apple with his long, ridiculously long tongue.
Yep.
It's just a joke, like for no reason. Stuff like that absolutely does happen. There's like fart jokes in here. Like, like a space camel fart, and Jar Jar's like P Usa, that kind of stuff is just like why,
right.
Why?
Let the humor serve a purpose, like
right.
The happy accident at the end where he like defeats a bunch of stuff. That's actually funny in concept, but compared with a bunch of other accidents happening, it's like this is too much.
Right. So like for me, I get all that, and I'm with you 100%. You're right, but I also kind of love Jar Jar.
Yes, yeah.
Like number one, I do think I have an appreciation just for what the character of Jar Jar actually did for cinema. Dude, we would not have Caesar, Planet of the Apes, like in the new trilogy.
He's the first CGI character, I believe.
Jar Jar is
like fully CG,
fully CG, and so Jar Jar paved the way for Gollum, Smeagol. Yeah. Jar Jar paved the way for Caesar and so many things we see now today. He paved the way, and obviously that's not looking at his character per se, but just looking. I can, as a film fan, I actually am really glad Jar Jar exists because of like Lucas really went on a limb there and it worked. Because even when I watch this movie, he looks good. Mm-hmm. Jar Jar looks pretty good. This is 1999 we're talking about. And so, I mean, it's pretty good. I mean, he looks better than some CGI now sometimes. So
for sure.
I mean, so and then, and that's kind of the beginning of motion capture as well, which is one of the big things. And so, I have that in the back of my mind, but I also do love, I love how much he he loves Anakin, like he loves little Annie, and he's rooting for Annie so hard when he's doing the pod racing, and
Yeah.
I don't know. I know Jar Jar is definitely there for comedic relief, and I know he's there to sell toys probably, and I know there's the cynical side of me knows all of these things, but at the same time I'm also like, yeah, but I kind of love him too. And it does it I love how even at the end they give him that moment with the king of the Gungans, and he makes him the general, and like he gets redemption with his people. That's cool to me. I like that stuff. So I think that Jar Jar is not a hit all the time, but the older I've gotten, the more I've liked Jar Jar, which is an interesting turn for me.
Yeah, and I think because I was like a fierce defender of him for so long, the older I get, the more I understand the complaints, but not to the level that they were taken. To where they made a man like want to commit suicide because he ruined Star Wars.
Yeah, man.
Saying that about anybody, like, isn't fair unless they like deliberately tried to sabotage, which hasn't happened. And there's a really great, I think I may have shared the videos in our one of our group chats, but there's a great YouTube channel. This guy it's called So Uncivilized. It's his YouTube channel, and he does videos for all the Star Wars movies, but he usually bases them around a particular character or theme. And the one about Phantom Menace is called "It's Time to Start Appreciating Jar Jar Binks." And he talks about from the technology perspective. He talks about he is the audience viewing, like he's the audience placeholder. Like we see the world through Jar Jar in the movie and how he experiences everything. General Kenobi. I don't know why I saluted there. It's weird. But he is that kid POV character. Like kids love Jar Jar. It's adults who have a problem. So that when I think about it in that sense, I can't help but love Jar Jar because he worked for me when I was that age, and also his place in the trilogy is actually really tragic. Jar Jar, I want to be careful how I use this analogy. We all have that friend who sometimes makes too many jokes or has really bad timing or is a little clumsy or a little awkward or just says stuff and we just go, why?
Yep, absolutely.
But at the same time, that same friend that we all have, we would fiercely defend. We love with all of our hearts, and we understand maybe a little misunderstood. I feel like if you read about what happens to Jar Jar after the prequels, it sucks. I would love
I have heard that it's absolutely terrible.
Do you know?
I don't know exactly, but I know the general idea. And
it's in the Aftermath books, which I haven't read, but I read this section. Essentially, people blame him for the rise of the Empire. And he loses his senatorial status and gets relegated to this. He gets banished from the Gungan city again and gets banished to the streets. And he's like a street performer for children. And the children love him, but the adults like despise him and like throw food at him and stuff constantly. And like, that's all we know. And like, it's that's so awful. Sad that was even written in that way. I would love to see a Jar Jar come back somewhere in a way that's really thoughtful and appreciative and fun. I think there's more to be had in redeeming him in general and redeeming that character arc. But I just wish people were a little nicer about the whole thing and approached it a little bit with a little bit more nuance. But that's criticism in general, right? That's just kind of the nature of the beast.
Especially with fandoms like Star Wars and Marvel and Lord of the Rings and all this stuff. It's like if you want to criticize the character and how they were written and all that stuff, that's fine. Like that's our right. We've been doing that for a while now. We've been talking about the things that we aren't a big fan of in the Phantom Menace. But man, if you start going into personal attacks about Ahmed Best and then also just how he ruined Star Wars, and the same thing goes for Jake Lloyd, same thing goes for
Ryan Johnson,
Kelly Marie Tran, Star Wars fans do better. Like this is listen, Star Wars means the world to me. I spend time editing a podcast about Star Wars. I spend time putting this stuff together. I love Star Wars, and I love to put my time into it and watch it over and over. It's a movie. It's a movie.
It's a fictional character.
It's a fictional franchise. It's movies, it's books, but at the end of the day, that's all it is. And so, like, get a life, you know?
And people matter more than stories matter. Okay, like, come on. And Jar Jar. When you think about Jar Jar, he's a side character, right? Jar Jar is he's a Pixar main character or a classic Disney film main character. Guy who's like super clumsy, not sure of himself, has a tragic backstory, but we don't know why. And then at the end of the movie, he finds himself, and everybody loves him, right? Like, they can make a Pixar movie about Jar Jar, and I think people would eat it up, right? Like, it would be 100%. I think we should start a hashtag, Michael. Bring back Jar Jar, or we can probably think of something.
Make Jar Jar great again.
Make Jar Jar Binks again? I don't know.
Oh my gosh, no.
But seriously, I would love, like, this is obviously not a well thought out thing, and I'll leave Jar Jar alone after this. I just wanted to dedicate special time to him.
I'm glad we did.
If Jar Jar showed up on Mando, I wouldn't be mad.
I won't either.
Like, I mean, there's story there. They've already retconned Aftermath a little bit, so retcon it again and bring my boy back. And they did him dirty. The fandom did him dirty, and then Lucasfilm did him dirty with that tragic ending. Actually makes sense given the grand scheme of the story. But that'd be an excuse just to see Naboo again, and I would love to see Naboo again. So,
yeah, I would, dude. I would love for them to go to Naboo on Mando.
And Jar Jar, that would be a perfect time if they could find a way to make him serve the story. Like,
I mean, Mando's got the ship now.
I mean, hey, that's a start. Maybe like something breaks, and the only place he can get it is where it was manufactured. And the only way to access the facility is to go through an underwater tunnel. So who's he got to enlist? I just wrote Mando season 4.
The planet core. Okay, dude. Okay, so obviously we've been talking about a bunch of stuff. I want to just go to the things we love because I think that there's a lot to love in this movie. And I want to start with just the world building, man.
Masterful.
It's masterful. Not even just the literal worlds, and by the way, also masterful. The whole Naboo thing and Coruscant and obviously Tatooine's been around for a long time, but just expanding the galaxy and like it, you know, it's different types of planets. You know, Naboo is very much a water and jungle type planet, and Coruscant, the entire planet is one large city, like the pilot says to Anakin. And, you know, just what a cool thing. The entire planet is one city. And, like, you know, we find out later. I know, me too. And we find out later that you go deep as you go down into the, like, lower levels. There's levels to the city. And, like, the lower you get, the more, like, sad it is. And, like, it's really a deep place to
it's a little underworld.
Yeah. And I mean, it is literally though. And so I don't know. I love the world building, like the literal, you know, definition, but this goes to the positives of the politics. I love what the politics do for the general, you know, scope of Star Wars. Like Star Wars has always been political. And I think we had to see this stuff. We had to see the rise of Palpatine and to see the idea of what the Emperor is. You know, when I was a kid, I always just remember thinking the Emperor is just the evil guy behind the Empire. The Empire didn't mean anything to me when I was a kid. Like, I didn't know, other than like the Empire is the bad guys and the rebellion is the good guys. That's what I saw it as when I was a kid.
It's kind of like all it is in the original trilogy, though. They're not like this crazy fleshed out villain. They're just
absolutely. It's more straightforward. It's black and white. Absolutely. In the original trilogy. And that was fine. Like, obviously that was great. Like, I loved it. But man, how much more powerful is Palpatine as a villain, knowing like knowing him as the politician and turning, being the one behind the Clone
Yeah.
Wars and being the
Mhm.
one and seeing that the Republic is the Empire. Like
Yeah.
the Republic turns when I made that connection when I was younger, I was like mind blown. Like, oh my
The
gosh, I
prequels
get it now.
legitimized the Empire as villains so much more than the originals ever did. And
Yeah.
it's fine. They work fine, like we said, but there's not a lot of nuance to them other than Vader himself. And obviously what Palpatine represents for Luke's arc. But stuff like the prequels, Rebels, like oh gosh, Rebels does so much in
Oh,
helping the
so
Empire be
good.
like a better like why they care or why they're evil and why they're so bad for the galaxy. Rogue One, I think, does a good job of that too, in Solo. But
The Bad
yeah, man,
Batch.
yeah, and the Bad Batch. Oh gosh, I'm
The
so
Bad
excited
Batch
for
does
season
such a
two.
good job there.
I need to
Oh,
rewatch season one,
so good,
but
man.
oh, so good. So the world building. This is where Lucas is a really good visual storyteller.
Oh God,
He's
yeah.
great at doing world building through just visuals, but this is actually where I'm going to get on I'm probably by myself here. This is actually where I actually appreciate his approach to dialogue. He doesn't try to overcomplicate it. He doesn't try to do this like super nuanced. How would this person say it? How would this person say it? He just goes like, if we were having a conversation and somebody said this the most plain, convenient, and easy way possible, so you would get it. That's how he approaches dialogue. It's very heavy-handed. It's very straightforward. I actually think straightforward is probably a better way when it's not romance related. Heavy-handed with the romance dialogue, very straightforward, and that straightforward dialogue when it comes to world building is enhanced by his skill with visual storytelling. And
Yeah.
that's why I think Phantom Menace excels so well at it and sets up the prequel era in such a beautiful way.
Yeah.
Lucas says each Star Wars movie he wants to take people to different places so they feel unique. And every single film, with the exception of Tatooine and like Camino and Coruscant, kind of being the only, but even in Coruscant, you see different levels of it throughout the trilogy, right?
Oh, totally. Yeah.
And you got to have recurring planets to an extent.
You absolutely have to. Like
Yeah,
Tatooine is a planet you have to revisit. And
yeah.
that's why I get tired of people complaining about, oh, another thing on Tatooine. Yeah, Tatooine is like where this all began, like on many levels. It's so
That's
important to Star Wars.
I don't want to get on a huge tangent here either, but that's one of my struggles with the sequel trilogy a little bit is we have a lot of similar locations, but they're different planets, and I'm like,
Just
why not just
call it what
make?
it is.
Why is it Tatooine? Why can't it just be Tatooine? Like, why is it? I don't even remember the name of the one of Rise of Skywalker, but it's another more desert, rocky planet.
It looks the same.
It looks the same, right? So I actually think Last Jedi does the best at that personally. Oh, I
By
brought it up first.
far. I
I
didn't
brought it
even
up
bring it
first.
up. I didn't bring it up. You did.
So
Look at
my
that.
point with that is, I just think the prequel trilogy excels at that, and Phantom Menace in particular. When you get to the end of Revenge of the Sith, after watching the Clone Wars through and Attack of the Clones, and you think about how much Phantom Menace really did do, because I had a small period of time. I still feel this way to an extent, where Phantom Menace is actually pretty detached from the rest of the prequel trilogy in a way, because it's 10 years before. There's a huge time jump.
Sure.
And I remember as a kid, like, man, I wish we had seen a little bit more of the Clone Wars in live action. But we also at the time had the micro series, so I'm like, oh, we still got to see them. So it never really fazed me. But I get that complaint from people. But because of the nature of wars, like, and how they, like, it's never just one huge thing and then it's war. It's like kind of small things happen. And how Lucas set this up to be setting the stage for the Clone Wars before all breaks loose in Attack of the Clones.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. Just brilliant.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I get what, like, there's that whole machete order,
I tried that once. I didn't care for it.
no, I hate it actually. I'm not a proponent of it at all because most of the time the machete order, most people would say just skip the Phantom Menace, and I think you should not skip the Phantom Menace. I think skipping that movie when you're like watching to get the full story, I think you have to have the Phantom Menace in there. Obviously, like if you want to talk about like quote unquote the plot of the Skywalker saga. This one has the least amount of it, I suppose, but there's so much that's set up here.
So much.
There's so much that's set up here, and including just thematically, like there's so many like themes set up here, so many like character traits from Anakin Skywalker you need to see. You need to see him as an innocent kid, and you need to see him. You need to see him as an innocent kid at the beginning, and you need to see him struggling with fear when he's leaving his mom, because that fear turns into things later, right? Mm-hmm. And fear of the future, and that fear turns into anger, and it turns in and even like grows into a whole nother fear of losing his loved ones later. That's the seed in this movie. You can't miss that. You can't just like not watch this movie. And so I hate the machete order. Like, really.
Yeah, I wasn't a fan of it. I actually added Phantom Menace to it because I thought it was heresy to exclude it. But,
I agree.
But going New Hope, Empire, prequel trilogy, Return of the Jedi was a little too jarring for me.
It's jarring. I don't like it. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I'm not a fan.
For me, you know, I hear a lot that from people that Anakin maybe should have been a teenager, and I'm sympathetic as to why they think that.
Sure, I get
it. I think Lucas had a point in saying, especially with the world building of the Jedi, in saying that when you're a teenager, you're a little more tainted by the world. You're a little more pessimistic and cynical. A 9-year-old is like a perfect age before your innocence really starts to evaporate.
Sure,
like where he's still impressionable but knowledgeable enough to make his way and be independent. So I think that's like really, really important. But one of the things you hit the nail on the head. Big thing for fear is very easy to represent in children. And what's a huge fear with separation anxiety, being away from your parents, being away from your mom. And then when you're a teenager, you can't wait to get away, right?
Absolutely.
So, and you know, Yoda says fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate leads to suffering. Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, is fear.
Yeah.
Right? The theme of fear in Anakin in the Skywalker saga. Episode 2 is anger. His anger at losing his mom. You still have fear throughout it. Fear leads to the anger at him losing his mom and killing the Tuskens and really entering the dark side for the first major time. And then that fear and that anger gets redirected to the Jedi when they deny him all that they deny him and betray him and all that. And that turns to hate against the Jedi, and then the original trilogy is his suffering.
Yeah,
man. That is actually one of my favorite lines of dialogue from the entire Star Wars saga.
It says it all. Yeah. And even in Attack of the Clones, Anakin is, you know, he's so mad at, you know, he's so angry that he kills them, like you said. Mm-hmm. He says to Padme in that conversation with her after that, "I hate them."
Yep.
Like he says that. He's already at hate. He's turned. That is the beginning of his turn. Absolutely. And so, I mean, he's turned.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Anakin is also super eager in Attack of the Clones, which I'll save some of this for that. He's super eager to get more powerful. He's power hungry. But why is he power hungry? Right? Because he says, I believe he says in Phantom Menace, he says, "I'll come back for you one day."
Yeah.
I'll come back for you. He wants to go free his mom. He wants to go free the slaves. And so his whole motivation for being a Jedi really is so he can free his mom.
Yeah.
And then that's taken from him.
Yeah.
So,
Man. Yeah. Wow. So good. And I do want to be clear. I do want to be clear also. Like I say he's turned at that point, like right then but then we see him in Revenge of the Sith, and he is like, I mean, he and Obi-Wan are brothers, and he is in a good place, you know, like seemingly. If he makes the right choices, he can get off of that path, but he doesn't. He continues to make choices. The choices Anakin makes from that moment on, that moment set him on the path to the dark side. Like that, he was kind of making some choices now.
He flirted with it before.
Yeah. Now he is on the path where if he keeps making choices, he's going to go further and further. And so that's all I mean. I don't mean like he's Darth Vader there. He's not, but he is firmly on the path toward the dark side at that point when he murders those and
he doesn't,
his hatred takes over.
He doesn't just get his feet wet. He jumps in the shallow end of the pool. Like he's in like neck deep at that point before he drowns in episode 3. And that is the moment where, from then on, that is the climax of Anakin's arc, where it's the turning point. From then on, he is having to resist the urge to go dark, and make himself be part of the light.
Right.
Whereas
Before it was different.
Kylo Ren's like the inverse. He has to make himself be part of the dark because he's consistently pulled to the light.
Yep.
So that's what I appreciate about the inverse of their characters.
I love that so much.
And you see it all throughout the Clone Wars, like crazy throughout the Clone Wars and in Revenge of the Sith. So,
yeah, totally agree, man. Okay, so let's move on to some other things that we love about this. Man, I love that conversation.
Yeah, it was good.
So, dude, okay, there's a few obvious highlights we have to hit.
Sure.
One of them's the pod race.
This is pod racing.
I love the whole I mentioned earlier, I love the whole middle act where they're on Tatooine. I think that whole area, that whole spot, I have a huge soft spot in my heart for Shmi Skywalker. I think she does such a good job of portraying his mom, and also I ship Shmi and Qui-Gon 100%.
Dude, I thought that as a kid too.
I totally did. I saw it. It was like unmistakable.
I feel so validated right now because you said
that. Totally. I've always thought that too. So yeah, you're not the only one, man. But I don't do ships, but I totally ship them.
There's a lot of ships in Star Wars.
There are a lot.
I miss my son. I'm sorry. Dad joke. There's another one.
No. So, but yeah, I love this whole middle area of the movie, also where we see Darth Maul find them and catch up to them in that like 20-second battle between Maul and Qui-Gon. It's so cool.
Yeah.
Anakin, drop. All that's so great. But the whole reason we're there is so that they can find some parts for their ship. They're basically stranded on Tatooine, essentially, and so they're having to get creative here, and the Force works in mysterious ways. Anakin, they you and me have always, but they happen upon Anakin, and I don't think it's coincidence at all. Neither does Qui-Gon. And so Qui-Gon definitely pursues, he knows something is different about Anakin from the beginning. And I love that too. I love all of that. Qui-Gon senses something. I always love that line. There's something different about this boy when he's talking to Obi-Wan over the comm. I love Qui-Gon so much. But, all this leads to Anakin. By the way, we see his arrogance, right? We see Anakin's arrogance. He's totally like, I'm the only human that can do it. And then he's also earlier in the movie, he's like, I wouldn't have gotten very far if I wasn't so good at building things. He's constantly bragging about himself. He's always been arrogant from the beginning, even when he was an innocent, child. But yeah, he just wants to help these people who need help. And, he offers to enter this pod race and that will help them buy the parts they need. And has no idea that he is going to be freed if he wins. He's doing this completely selflessly, which I think is important. He's not doing this to be free. He is doing this solely for others. Yeah. Probably he wants to win too. But okay, so that's the emotional element to the scene, right? The pod race scene is awesome.
So
it's awesome.
How well it holds up visually even today.
It's astounding.
When you see the technology, like the computers they were working on, like it's insane that they were able to do that, and it still looks so good. And I don't know if this is actually documented anywhere, but my dad, and for those of you who don't know, I'm going to give my dad a shout out. He shares a lot of like different cool things in the group, and
yes,
I love it, and I love that he's active in here.
Skip
more. Love you, Dad. This is your shout out. You're probably asleep now. But anyway, he always said growing up that the pod race is a giant love letter to Ben-Hur. Have you ever seen Ben-Hur?
I have not.
The
That's
Charlton
one
Heston version in
yeah.
particular. So
I
the
will.
big set piece in that movie is a chariot race at the end. But it's like, it's not just chariot racing. It's in a circle and it's like in like a desert. But like people die. Like the whole like the pod race, the pods like getting stuck to one another, and when one rips off, it like blows up some bulbas. That happens in Ben-Hur. Someone was actually killed in the filming of the chariot race when one of them flew off and it killed a crew member that was standing outside. So it was like they did it all for real. So they,
oh my gosh,
super influential, amazing scene. We actually just rented it for Easter because it's actually a Christian movie, one of the best Christian movies ever made. Highly recommend it. It is almost 4 hours long though, so just when you watch it, 3 hours and like 42 minutes. That's why we haven't finished it because it takes forever now. With how it is being a dad. But anyways, so my dad would always say, "This has been her. This has been her." And like after I finally saw Ben-Hur, I'm like, it's amazing how they kind of redid this in like a sci-fi sense. I don't know if it was an actual inspiration. I hope that that's true, but even if it wasn't and it was accidental, it's great. But also the pod race is a masterclass in sound
design, baby.
Oh my, chef's kiss. It's so good. So much of it doesn't have music.
I know.
It's all just sound design,
which is a great call.
Yeah,
it's a great call.
And when you think about the fact that it's none of it's like really real footage other than the shots of Anakin and maybe whatever tennis ball they had for Sebulba,
right?
So they had to Foley in everything.
I know. It's amazing.
It's
incredible. Wow. The sound of Sebulba's pod racer is yeah.
Yours is better.
I don't know about that, but I'll tell you what, man. Like to the point, this scene is so legendary for sound design in my mind that like when the Batman, when we watched the Batman, and you were there, we watched it together.
Man, that was good.
Yeah, when that Batmobile turned on for the first time, I was like, I haven't felt this way about sound design in a movie since the Phantom Menace. like that's what that felt like to me. That's awesome. Instantly brought me back to Sebulba's pod racer and that feel. And but man, yeah, the visuals hold up. It looks good, like very good, and that's all mostly all CGI, obviously, except for when they show Anakin. And it's
and the beginning is they use so many miniatures too for like when they're oh gosh, when they're introducing all the racers, like that's all miniatures. And that's something else I wanted to mention. Phantom Menace has the most miniatures out of anything in the Skywalker saga.
The most practical effects.
Most practical effects, most miniatures. And it is the last Star Wars film shot on 35 millimeter. Some of it was shot digitally too. It was one of the first movies to utilize that. The first major Hollywood blockbuster to be shot fully digitally was Attack of the Clones. So
I'll tell you what, man.
Star Wars revolutionizes technology and like filmmaking in almost every film.
This was a sweet spot for film, and because you had movies that year and really right around that time, like The Matrix and like the Phantom Menace, and you had Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship of the Ring. Really, all of those were filmed at the same time, so you could say it about all of them. This was the perfect spot for me. If I'm looking at film, it's the perfect spot where they couldn't do everything with CGI yet, but they could do enough to balance it with the practical to like perfection. Like when you look at Lord of the Rings, you look at The Matrix, you look at Star Wars: The Phantom Menace, it is an incredible balance of mind-blowing CGI effects that never existed and mind-blowing practical effects, miniatures, and like all of these.
Look at Pirates of the Caribbean too. I mean, we could go on and on and on with how many there are, but yeah, you're right. It is. I think about that late '90s, early 2000s.
It's the perfect era for film.
Because then you get a lot 2009 through like 2007 really through like 2014. It's like everything was CGI. Like post Transformers, everything was CGI craziness, right? Transformers was like one of the first to really like go all out with that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just it was a good time for movies,
It was perfect. Yeah,
and I was
sweet
so
spot.
young. Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, man. But yeah, the pod racing scene is awesome. Obviously, Anakin wins. Anakin is freed, and he didn't know. So like he wins. He's so happy that he won. He's so happy that he made it to the finish line. Actually,
Yeah.
but he's also just happy that he got to help these people. And that moment when Qui-Gon tells him that you're freed, no, you're no longer a slave. But then like the heartbreak right after when he's like, "What about mom?" And it's just like it's so sad. Like I can't imagine feeling what Anakin felt when he's like the guilt that must go with him going forward because of that has to play into what happens later because he is I can't imagine earning freedom like that,
Mhm.
in through a deal, but your mom not being able to come with you and how you must carry that as a kid. And so
I
like
always wish Qui-Gon would have tried harder. There's actually a deleted scene where he like tries harder to get Shmi, um, but they had a queen with them. There was a very urgent mission.
there was an
If,
urgent mission and
if he had rescued her, it would have like invited a lot of potential danger to a lot of innocent people. That
yeah, and people make the same argument about Canto Bite and the kids, and I'm always like, yeah, okay, what would they have done with the kids once they took them off of their home
I always
planet?
thought they should have gone back at the end
I think
of the
they.
trilogy, not Last Jedi, of the trilogy. Like it would have been
I
nice
got
if they
you.
brought them
I
in.
I, I got you. I think, but do they win? They beat the First Order at the end anyway, and the Final Order at the end anyway. So
Yeah,
do they get freed? Oh no, they don't get freed because of that. They're
yeah. Their Candlelight was just had slaves because it had slaves.
well, okay, but here's the thing. Obviously, this is the Last Jedi. This isn't the Phantom Menace, but
This is more on Rise of Skywalker than it is Last Jedi for me personally. I
I
don't
got
have an
you.
issue with them leaving there.
So like with Canto Bite, something that they go into even in the Clone Wars with these, and the Bad Batch and Rebels, all of these, when you get to certain places like far enough out from, whether it's the New Republic or the Republic, they don't have as much control there. And once the Empire took over, they just let them do free, they just let them do their slaving. So
Yeah,
the First
that's
Order
right.
is the First Order is they're very much in power, at a to a certain degree. Oh no, they're in power. The Republic is destroyed. So the First Order is, in in control right now. So Canto Bite free to have slaves. And so, yeah, to me it makes sense why at the end of the Rise of Skywalker, they, the New Republic's probably going to go in there and start to, whip them into shape a little bit. But maybe not. I don't know. That's just me headcanon filling in the spot there.
It would have been nice, I think, at the end of Rise of Skywalker, like we if we had seen like a longer montage, like before we see Rey on Tatooine, like we see Poe like in space or like maybe in a political sphere, like leading the New Republic, and then
Yeah.
we see Finn and Janna showing up at Cantabite with Rose and like busting open the gates, and you see Broom Boy, he's a little bit older, and like
That would have been great. I'm not going to lie. That'd be
and,
awesome.
and then they go to Rey because the last we see of the others, they're just like hugging, which is cool and all, but that's one of those things where I would just wanted a little bit more. So
And
yeah,
it would tie the movies together so beautifully.
but
I'm actually
also,
totally with you. That'd be awesome.
yeah, it would have been great. So I wish Qui-Gon was able to do more, but I understand why he couldn't.
Yeah.
However, you're reading Master and Apprentice right now, right?
Yeah, I just started it.
Have you gotten to the part where they talk about slavery in the galaxy yet?
Mm-mm.
If I remember correctly, there is a conversation. I know Yoda's involved. I think it's between Qui-Gon and Yoda. Qui-Gon kind of pushes Yoda why the Jedi haven't done more to end slavery in the galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
So Canto Bite doesn't have slaves because the Final Order is in control, because the Last Jedi is like a day after the Force Awakens. So it's not they're just so far in the outer rim that they can kind of do whatever the heck they want. Like that.
True. That's a good point. Yeah.
So, but the Jedi don't get involved, and Yoda doesn't have a good answer. It's basically just like, who decides what is slavery and who servitude, and Qui-Gon keeps pushing back against them, and basically the Jedi are like, it's too much of a thing for us to tackle right now. Like that's kind of Yoda's answer. It's a little bit more nuanced than that. It's a really good moral debate they have, but that also was written knowing that Qui-Gon tries to free Shmi and Anakin later, and how he's just like, oh, I can only get the boy.
Yeah.
And understanding and empathizing with Anakin's plight, not saying you have to let go of your mother. I don't think he says that once. He's there for him and he comforts him. He's the father figure that Anakin needed. So you have to let me know when you get to that part of the book. I really, really liked Master and Apprentice. It's good, man.
I'm excited to get to
the end will make you cry. The like last chapter made me cry.
Oh man,
it's good.
Yikes! I'm ready. I like to be hurt by Star Wars.
Yeah, I do too. It does it from Obi-Wan's perspective.
Oh man.
Anyway, I don't want to spoil it. It does something with Obi-Wan that's great. Speaking of Obi-Wan, I have always been a big fan of young Obi-Wan in this movie. I think it's really cool to see. We saw Alec Guinness and like very seasoned, very proper, very experienced veteran Obi-Wan. To him being like not a rookie, but kind of like a young, like eager, like, yes, I'm ready to take the trials. No, like disagreeing with his master, kind of like being what Luke was like. And now you're like, oh man, like the Padawan braid tail thing. Like I thought that was a cool touch. And Obi-Wan is just like a ninja in this movie. Qui-Gon's like a very like tall, like fights kind of like a tall guy kind of thing, where Obi-Wan's like doing flips and doing crazy spins with his lightsaber, and just the way he fights. He doesn't have a lot of like crazy depth to his character until the end. And I actually don't like that he pretty much sits out of Tatooine. I've always wished he was a little bit more involved there.
I think they needed to establish Qui-Gon's father-like nature toward Anakin, and why he feels the way he feels, and why maybe Obi-Wan would push back because he wasn't there. He didn't
Obi-Wan doesn't really. When they meet, Anakin says, "Nice to meet you." And Obi-Wan kind of like shakes his hand and laughs, but he doesn't say anything. Yeah. He doesn't actually, I think, speak to Anakin until the final scene of the movie, like, or at the funeral. I don't think they have another exchange of dialogue, like, at all. So I kind of wish we had been given a little bit more interaction between them.
Yeah,
it's not so much criticizing what's there; it's wishing for more to help flesh things out. Of course, we have two more movies for that, and I think that also highlights like. Obi-Wan really wasn't close with Anakin, and he was forced into this role.
I think to me, that's why it doesn't bother me, because I think that is just meant when you see them at the beginning of Attack of the Clones and they're just at each other's throats, man, they're totally brothers. Like, but clearly Obi-Wan is also trying to be the father figure also, and it's not going well. And you can tell, you can see this was thrust upon him probably before he was ready for it at the beginning of that movie. And I think their relationship or lack thereof in The Phantom Menace kind of highlights that, and it makes that a little more believable personally. But I get what you're saying.
I also appreciate it from the perspective of Obi-Wan isn't given as much to do. He's very much in a service role as a Padawan until at the end. He says he's ready for the trials. Then they're thrust upon him very unexpectedly with the death of his master and the return of the Sith, and he's by himself. And Ewan McGregor handles those last couple scenes like a champ.
Yeah, man.
It's just like all of a sudden all this responsibility is thrown at Obi-Wan, and when you think about the original trilogy, you're like, oh, there's the seeds of the downfall.
Yep.
And Obi-Wan and Anakin's relationship, I think pretty much everyone would agree they bicker like brothers, but I don't know of a time that Anakin ever refers to Obi-Wan as a brother. He does in Attack of the Clones say he says he's been like a father to me. And he even tells Obi-Wan, you're the closest thing I have to a father. But what does Obi-Wan say to Anakin when he at the end of Revenge of the Sith? You were my brother.
Yeah.
So Obi-Wan saw the relationship from a brotherly perspective. Anakin was yearning for a father figure.
Yep.
And that clash and that misunderstanding created a lot of the issues that they ended up having.
Yeah.
And anyway, I just love that.
Oh, that's so good. Yeah. Ooh.
And just how oh gosh, when Qui-Gon dies and Obi-Wan shouts no, that's probably like my favorite no of the saga, other than like the original Darth Vader.
Well, there's some very notable terrible ones. So
if you're speaking of the one from Darth Vader, I actually love that one, but we'll save that for another time.
there's one that was the one, but then there's also the no,
Oh,
no in Return of the Jedi. That's the worst
canon.
one.
It's not canon.
Yeah. Yeah, it is though. That's by far the worst one, and that's probably That's probably one of the worst things about the special edition.
Yeah, I think we talked about that on that episode.
We did, yeah.
Can we talk about the big one now?
Yeah,
one of the last big ones.
We have to. Let me ask you: is this your favorite lightsaber battle? I don't think it's not. I didn't think so. I know what it is. I know what your favorite is. It's not even a question.
So
Battle of Heroes.
Yeah, for sure. The one thing I think there's two things that Battle of Heroes I think has on Duel of the Fates. Oh gosh, I don't like to come at it from a critical point of view, but Battle of Heroes is just fueled by emotion, which elevates it for me anyways. And I actually do think the choreography is a little bit less choreography at times. Yes, there's a lot of spin moves and stuff, but for me it works. And what I mean is the Duel of the Fates is insanely choreographed. Like, it's amazing. The small quibble I have with it, and this is just a tiny thing, it doesn't detract from my enjoyment. I just notice it more as I get older. When they're fighting, and they're fighting Darth Maul, and they're swinging at Darth Maul, they're not swinging at Darth Maul. They're swinging at different ends of his saber. Mm-hmm. It is choreographed to make it look like they're fighting Darth Maul's saber, not trying to actually kill him. And so it's not bad. They cover it mostly fine, especially with the breaks with a little bit of hand-to-hand combat. So it's a very small detail. Oh, do we get to see the baby?
We're on live stream, but there's hardly anyone in here. Hey, Bubba. Sorry, everybody. My son's here.
Here comes one of the greatest Star Wars characters known to man. Hi, baby. Hey, Kanan.
Say hi to everybody.
Do you remember me?
See Curry?
When I went to Arkansas and saw everybody, Kanan was my buddy for like a whole afternoon. You remember that? He just like chilled with me for so long.
Yeah.
It took me back.
Scott, you're in here. Scott, dude, you're having a baby. What are you doing in here?
Like, he's having a baby now?
Like, yeah, his wife is in they're at the hospital. Scott. I mean, it must be a long wait.
Yeah, that's true.
There must be a lot going on.
That does happen.
I know what that's like.
Oh.
Love you, Bubby.
It's okay.
Love you.
Hi, Kendall.
Love you. All right. Sorry about that.
Dude, no. Never apologize for showing your baby.
He just makes...
He said slow roll.
Oh, dude. I know a little about that. Hang in there. Hang in there. Oh, man. I can't believe you're in here right now. It's amazing.
That being said about Duel of the Fates, though, that is something I can easily overlook because it was the first insanely choreographed lightsaber fight on that level. So it's really easy for me to overlook.
Yeah, and I get it, dude. It's like, so when you look at I think your comparison to Battle of the Heroes is great because it is that is emotion driven and fueled, and it is highly choreographed, but it's like you feel the emotion so much more than the choreography in that, and it does feel like they're swinging at each other in that one. Yeah. I'm with you, and that's actually something that I love. I think a lot of people detract from the sequel trilogy and the fighting because it is less like that. It's less
flashy.
It's less flashy. It's much more like people are fighting with broadswords and like really big swords kind of a thing, and it's much more just like power driven. And I personally feel like I love that, number one, because it's later on, and there's not a formal Jedi temple that's training them from birth, or like from them as like a young child in the Force, and they don't have all this training in
Yeah.
there like these Jedi did back then. And even like when you see later, you have Luke, you have Kanan, you have Ezra. None of these Jedi uh, fight like Ahsoka does, right? They fight
Right.
much more at a raw style. And so if you see when you see Rey and Kylo, it totally makes sense why they would fight differently than they did in the prequel era. But also, I like that. I feel like they're really trying to hit each other.
Mhm.
I really feel like they're trying to like slice each other in half.
Well,
you know?
and Kylo's lightsaber demands that type of fighting style because it's literally shaped like a broadsword.
Yeah.
So, and I think what I appreciate about the fights in the sequels is that is one thing where I feel like they really forged their own identity. You have in the original trilogy, you have the fighting is very like fencing like they're using English rapiers, and it's like very fencing heavy in how they
Yeah.
fight. There's some Japanese like katana broad swinging and stuff too, because it's two-handed. It's like it's a marriage of like the English and the Japanese.
Yeah.
Whereas in the prequels, it's very like ninja, like very a lot more of that Eastern influence comes in. There's a lot more flips, a lot more
Yeah.
acrobatics going around. There's still the general concept, right? But there's a lot more swinging and crazy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the sequels, you have more the raw, barbaric kind of fighting.
Mm-hmm.
In the Force Awakens, I struggled for a long time on how Rey beat Kylo. I'm less worried about it now because he's wounded, he's emotionally like
Absolutely. Yeah.
crazy, and I don't think we realized how bad that wound was until I read an excerpt from the book. Uh, and of course, Rey's whole Force Awakening thing that happens there, while it should have been more fleshed out, in my opinion, it works for me. And then the Last Jedi, then they're fighting a whole room of Praetorian guards, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then by the time we get to, so
Rise of Skywalker.
really in Last Jedi, Kylo's probably still healing at that point, right? And just killed his master, so they're fighting a whole room full of guys. So it's not the same comparison. You get Rise of Skywalker. One of the things I like about Rise of Skywalker is the duel on. Oh, what is the name of that planet where the Death Star is?
It's Endor, right?
It's in the Endor system, but it's not the forest moon of Endor.
Right. But
Yeah, like it's not on the same. It's not on Endor.
right.
It's in the Endor. I don't know. Anyway,
Yeah. I don't know the exact name either.
but that fight is the most prequel-like fight of the trilogy. But you have Kylo at full power.
Yep.
You have Rey, who's trained for a year. They're doing jumps and flips, and Kylo's dodging like the blade, like without even igniting his own.
But it still
Like,
has that power too.
yeah, it still has the rawness of the sequel trilogy, where it's like just a little bit less. What's the word? Like precise, I guess. But it's also a little bit more flashy, like the prequels, because they have more training. So I just appreciated that detail, how the fights kind of evolved, and it all really is because I think the fights were kind of an afterthought at first in the original trilogy, like in terms of lightsaber battles. Then they kind of potentially grew, and he really wanted to show the Jedi at the height of their power.
Mm-hmm.
And the Duel of the Fates was the great. I mean, dude, come on, one of the greatest moments when Darth Maul ignites that second blade.
Well, he opens that the elevator opens to reveal him, and the music kicks in, the choir right then.
Duel of the Fates is one of the greatest tracks
It's so good.
ever produced.
Yep.
That might be John Williams' crowning achievement. It's at least a contender.
It's a contender for sure. I wouldn't put it above a couple, but it's up there. It's so good.
Yeah.
That's one of the cases where one of the more popular ones. It's popular for a reason. It's amazing. That's it. It's so good.
Anytime I get the opportunity in a video game to use a double-bladed lightsaber, I do. Because like when we would duel our backyard and stuff a lot as kids, my brother and I were both gifted a Darth Maul lightsaber. Actually, it's like within reaching distance. Let me finish this thought and I'll grab it. But it's we used to duel with those a lot, and so I just have a soft spot for it. And like my dream lightsaber for a time, I actually did this on Fallen Order, the video game, was a double-bladed purple lightsaber.
Awesome. Love
And
it.
yeah,
That's
and I
awesome.
got it, and I getting to have that dream come true in Fallen Order all comes back to the prequel trilogy and Duel of the Fates.
Yeah.
It's just so epic, man.
That's awesome. And here's what I love too, man. Like this fight is awesome to watch. And it's awesome because also the music. But this fight is just there is emotional power everywhere in it. This is where all the emotions are in the final act for me. And there's so much at stake, right? Like we've heard that, this is not an original thought. Dave Filoni
Yeah, I thought you
went
were going to bring that up.
deeply, yeah, Dave Filoni went deeply into this in his behind the scenes of the Mandalorian thing that they put on Disney Plus. And it blew my mind because I never thought of it this way until he talked about it. But it's called Duel of the Fates because of what was at stake in this fight, in this duel. And it was because if Qui-Gon lives, there's a good chance Anakin does not go down the path he goes down because he has the father figure that he needs to keep him, on the right track for those young formative years and all that. But he doesn't. He doesn't survive. And so the onus is now on Obi-Wan, who is kind of forced onto him. He did not he never dreamt of doing that until he promised Qui-Gon that he would. And so he trained him and he did his best, and there's a lot of good that came out of that at some point, but at the end of the day, Anakin, like Dave Filoni says, Anakin needed a father. He didn't need a brother to raise him. He needed a father, and that is the duel of the fates. And so there's so much at stake in this fight. And then you brought it up when Qui-Gon dies, the feeling that we get and the feeling that we see coming from Ewan McGregor's acting as Obi-Wan, it's gut wrenching. It's incredible. And then, dude, I just got chills thinking about it. As soon as that that opens up, that as soon as that door opens up or whatever, that he's able to come through finally, after he just is forced to watch his master. His master he's forced to watch his master be killed. He can't do anything about it. And when it opens up and he's able to come attack Maul, it's kind of similar to how Luke goes ham on Vader once Vader brings Leia into the picture, right?
Yeah.
It is like, nope, you're done now. And it's brutal. It's amazing, that emotion that he fights with in that moment. And it's really crazy because you don't see that from Obi-Wan very often.
And that's probably the best choreographed part of the fight.
Oh yeah, absolutely. He wanted to tear his head off in that moment. It was oof.
You also see a little bit. This is a little bit of a reach. Well, first thing, the thing about Dave Filoni, I don't think the full brilliance of Duel of the Fates, like the emotion. If you view the film as standalone, the emotional depth to the fight really isn't there. If you view it in the context of the entire trilogy, like you finish Revenge of the Sith and retroactively look back at it after hearing what Dave Filoni talked about, the full brilliance of it is realized. Because a lot of times Star Wars, you have to look at the stories as a trilogy of like, this was set up here and paid off here. This is why it was Duel of the Fates. And this is why anytime Anakin is going through something huge, they played that song again.
Yeah.
They played it during,
they knew they had to have. Lucas knew from that point that was, I mean, there's a reason they named that track that.
I don't think it's like very, very obvious within the film why it's called Duel of the Fates, but in the context of the trilogy and that he was planting those seeds purposely, then I think is absolutely genius.
Yeah, it's definitely something that they planned. It's clear that it was planned, but when you first watch it for the first time in 1999, the sheer weight of that fight was not as evident as it was until we watched Revenge of the Sith.
Right. I also there's another seed that Lucas planted there that I don't think people see, and maybe he didn't intend this, but I pick up on it every time I rewatch it. It is the hypocrisy of the Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
They're not supposed to have attachments. you cannot have the reaction
Nope.
that Obi-Wan had to Qui-Gon dying without being attached. Obi-Wan is more attached than he lets on, but Obi-Wan is an example of being willing to admit his attachments and being willing to overcome them in the name of doing what's like more right and more important. The Siege of Mandalore is a good example of that.
Oh man.
Even though they were being manipulated and the Ahsoka was right. But also Qui-Gon, when he says his last wish is for Anakin to be trained because he cares about Anakin, but one of his last moments is he strokes Obi-Wan's face tenderly. And Master and Apprentice gets into their relationship. Their relationship was not always good.
Yeah.
It took time. Can't wait. And
you can see that in this movie too. Like that's
and knowing it was already great before, but now that I've read Master and Apprentice, like it makes me appreciate that so much more. And it makes it hurt so much more.
Lord, I'm gonna have to read this more.
But it's also Qui-Gon was also showing that you can be a true Jedi and have these attachments and still do what's right and not fall to the dark.
Right. I mean, and you said the Siege of Mandalore. What I immediately thought of was when Satine is killed. And
well, that goes to that because he doesn't go to avenge her.
Right.
He chooses to go save Palpatine.
He has the absolute chance to. Like if anyone had the right to at that moment, it was him. Like, you know, they have you. If anyone had the excuse to, it really is what I meant to say.
Yeah.
It was him at that moment. But he said, and I think he said, I don't remember the exact line because it's been a while since I watched that arc, but he says something like, there's something about, he says, that would be the easy way, yes. But that's not, that's not what I'm going to do. Or so I don't remember what the line is.
He talks about setting aside attachments is what he does. And in that moment, I get the Jedi mindset. I get why it's important sometimes.
Yeah.
But it's just.
Yeah. It's so good, man. Yeah, and seeing that's why it's so refreshing seeing that pure emotion and attachment in Obi-Wan at that moment. And it's in that attachment that he made a promise to Qui-Gon that he probably wasn't ready to make, And so but at the same time, like what else was he supposed to do? Like and so, man, I don't know. I love the fight. I think it's amazing. It obviously it's great to watch, but it's also so great to so great to feel. Drew Miller, we are still live. We are, dude. Curry and I are going, man.
Yeah, man. Hey, you said you wanted good content, and I'm just going for it. Speaking of, I have a question about Duel of the Fates for you. Okay. This is a nitpick thing. This is a Curry nitpick.
Okay.
And it didn't bother me at all until like 2 years ago, randomly.
Okay.
When Obi-Wan beats Anakin in Revenge of the Sith, it's when he jumps over him and there's free, like you can be cut, right?
Say that again?
When Obi-Wan beats Anakin in Revenge of the Sith.
Oh, yeah.
He has the high ground. He jumps over him and cuts him.
Yeah.
That's how he beats Maul. He flies over him. Obviously, Maul didn't see it coming, right?
Right.
Maul had ample opportunity because he literally does this.
I know.
Also, when Obi-Wan's just chilling there hanging, Maul's like slashing the floor. I'm like, dude, why don't you just like force push him? Like, those are things I think with Star Wars, I just have to willingly just like set aside. But given the rest of the trilogy, I'm like, and how much they utilize those abilities in the Clone Wars, I'm like, yeah, Maul could have killed him there, but also maybe Maul wanted to toy with him because the Sith are evil. So I have to headcanon it away because otherwise it's like, it falls apart a little bit.
Yeah. I don't know. No, it is nitpicking a bit, but I get what you're saying, and I'm not gonna lie, I've seen that too. Like I've totally have noticed the part with the him hitting the saber down and just trying to strap it and go. That's never bothered me at all. I have noticed. I've thought about like, wait, he has the high ground right now. How is Obi-Wan gonna do this? And you're right. Whenever he jumps over him, he totally just watches it happen. And so I don't know. I always just kind of thought, man, he must have just been taken by surprise, like that he could actually do that, And so I don't know.
I think
it's just one of those things.
Yeah, and I think it bothers me more. He just doesn't go like and lift Obi-Wan off, like his hands off the thing, and just like. But it's also possible maybe Jedi can resist that, and
yeah, sure.
So that's one of the things. But
yeah. Yeah, it's one of those things. There are some things in Star Wars that are just like, yeah,
Yeah,
they could have done this, they could have done that, they didn't, this happened, whatever.
yeah.
So to me,
But
that's one of the things, and it's it's kind of like, I don't know. Yeah,
you mentioned
I don't
the
know how to answer that other than it's yeah, it
It's just
happened.
something I wanted to bring up and see if I was the only one or not.
No, I know I've noticed it before,
Okay.
but it's also something that doesn't get on my nerves at all.
And that's another reason why I think Battle of Heroes is a more well thought out fight from a blocking standpoint with directing.
Sure.
But there's a scene you mentioned earlier that I would be remiss if we didn't talk about. And I think this is a good like kind of bookend to what we're talking about is the funeral.
Oh man.
Qui-Gon's funeral. Couple highlights because I'm sure you have a tangent you want to go on with it too. I love the symmetry. Obviously, we know Anakin and Qui-Gon's relationship was pretty profound.
Hmm.
That they are buried in the same way. They're both cremated. I love that. It's just a small thing.
Yeah.
But the music that plays during that scene, I could hum it in my head.
For some reason, Halo is stuck in.
Yeah, but it's like they use it again in Revenge of the Sith in a much darker way. Yeah.
Nope, that's Halo. Doing it again.
Yeah.
No, it's
Or is that Revenge of the Sith?
why does that sound like Creed?
Wide open. Yeah.
No, it's the no. Okay, I got it. That is it. That
No, I
the
think it's a mix
Palpatine?
of everything we just did.
Okay.
Because there's
It-
hints of that in there,
'cause
and
that's
then there's
the-
hints of Anakin's dark deeds, I think, in there too.
Oh, okay. You know what? I need to go back and watch that. I don't remember what the music. I thought that they did some of the Palpatine theme in there,
They
which
do.
I think they
kinda,
do.
because there's so much foreshadowing in that scene.
Right.
Like, it's the tragedy of realizing, like, oh gosh, Qui-Gon's dead. What does this mean? And
Yeah.
like Anakin, like I kind of wish we had gotten to see Anakin's initial reaction to finding out Qui-Gon was dead. To be honest with you, I
Yeah.
didn't think about that until right now. But like getting to see Anakin, like, I loved him and he's gone.
Yeah.
But also like Yoda and Mace being like, there's always two of them. And then like
Yeah.
we see it rack focuses to Palpatine staring. And then that meme, somebody shared it the other day. The only two people between Anakin and Palpatine are Padme and Kenobi.
I know that blew my mind.
Like, I don't know if that was intentional or not, but that's a great.
and then later on, in the meme, there was a picture of later on. I think it was at the end of Revenge of the Sith. It was just Vader standing next to Palpatine
Yes.
/ the Emperor, and no one was between them. It was just them two because
Cinema.
the other two are out of the picture. So yeah, that was pretty great.
Yeah.
Dude, I love this scene so much. It's beautiful, it's haunting, and you know, we get that obvious not hint at all. It's very clear, and I can't believe I didn't get it when I was a kid. But you see, like, you know, they're talking about, but who was it, the master or the apprentice? And it like pans out and you see this like profile shot of Palpatine with the flames, and it's like
It's so good.
clearly this like mysterious and like blatant, this is the Emperor. Man, it's so good. Everything you said is great. I don't have a whole lot to add to it other than that's one of the best scenes of the movie. It's so great, and
It also
it's haunting.
sets up the search for the master, right? Because they figured Darth Maul was the apprentice, but when Dooku shows up, they're like, oh, he has to be the master. He was a former Jedi. He's old. He's experienced. He was one of the greatest duelists, but he's not. And
Right.
Anyway. So
Right.
I can go on and on.
Yeah, man. And okay, so now we got the celebration at the end, and someone pointed this out in a stream a while back.
And I think I remember with this.
Okay, so I have to bring it up because it kind of blew my mind, and I never noticed this. And I'm a music guy; I cannot believe I never noticed this. But so you know, the part I was just humming is the Palpatine theme, or the Emperor's theme. You know, it's very present whenever you listen to when he's talking about, have I ever told you the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise? That whole scene, you can hear it. It's also all throughout the end of Return of the Jedi. The so if you listen to this celebration theme at the end of Phantom Menace, it's just like this. It's the same timing. It's like a happy version of Palpatine's theme, which means even in celebration, even in victory, ultimately they still lost. Like, it's a hint that even though they're celebrating right now, it's a facade. Like, it's a fake celebration. Like, it's real to them, but they have no idea that they're actually like just playing into his plan.
And it's even more wild because that victory music starts after Palpatine says, "We will watch your career with great interest," to Anakin.
Yeah.
And like, looking back, you're like, oh no, that's so bad.
Yeah. Please don't watch his career with great interest.
Yeah.
But I thought that blew my mind when I heard that, and I'm actually really mad that I never caught that. But
I love Jake Lloyd's half
John
smile
Wayne.
too, where Batman smiles at him and he's just like, like, that's gonna be my wife.
Yep. I love that scene so much. It's just so great. It's so fun.
It's a good happy ending.
Yeah, very happy ending. And again, amidst the happiness, there's still that score hints that it's not as happy as you think.
The prequels, they all do that. All three of them, to an extent. Revenge of the Sith, not as much, but
Attack of the Clones ends on a more somber note because it ends on the wedding, right?
It ends on the wedding. It's happy, but it's not because they're not supposed to be doing it.
Yeah, it's like this. It's Across the Stars is the theme that's playing at the end of that, and it's like, even though it's like you feel like, yay, they're getting married or whatever, but it's also like he's not supposed to be doing this. We know that he's going down the path of the dark side right now, and this is just sending him down further. We know that, so there's still an ominous feel, especially coming after what was there in the previous scene where you see the clone army and city, or Palpatine overlooking it, and like, oh.
And then Revenge of the Sith flips it. It's got a really ominous overall ending, and then the final scene is one of hope.
Yep.
To bring you out of the darkness, to set you up for the originals. It's great.
So good. Man,
so I know you mentioned earlier that you said we have a clip from Drew that we want to play?
We do, yeah. Before we go, we have a clip from Drew that we're going to play. And Drew was not able to join us tonight. I think he's in the chat still. I'm not sure. But Drew, we're about to play your video, man. So, yeah, Drew sent in just a few thoughts about the Phantom Menace, and I wanted to give y'all a chance to hear those. So here we go.
Hello there, everybody. This is Drew Miller, long-lost co-host of A Certain Point of View, a Star Wars podcast. My work and travel schedule is absolutely bonkers, but thanks to my incredible co-host and Michael, the host, I get to submit this video and still talk about Star Wars. I love y'all. Thank you for letting me be part of the team. The Phantom Menace, I know it's a deep dive, but real quick, I just have to say, the Phantom Menace is without a doubt what made me into a crazy Star Wars fan from a young age. At 9 years old, which is, I believe, what I was when it came out, maybe 8. My father showed me and my brother the original trilogy before it came out to get us excited because he loved Star Wars at a young age. And everything about it was just so great for me at a young age. The video games, the toys, the Lego sets, just obsessed with it. And it really set me off from a young age of being the Star Wars fan that I am today, going on, 20 whatever years now. It's awesome. As far as the depth, I know this is a deep dive episode. As far as the depth of the Phantom Menace, I'm going to shout out all the things that go on in the movie as far as, the politics and the fat cat bureaucrats unable to do anything about the Trade Federation and their, terrorism and, unfair, trade embargoes and all the stuff that they're doing in the Senate. It's just like, we don't have time to do the paperwork and discuss it, so sorry, Naboo. There's so many deep aspects regarding that, the relationship between the people of Naboo and the Gungans. So many great things. Anakin at a young age, Obi-Wan in his formative years, but so many great things. Anakin at a young age, Obi-Wan in his formative years. But to me, it all comes down to Qui-Gon Jinn and the depth of his character and his dialogue and what he brings to the Jedi Order as a whole, regarding the mythology and the lore of the Force. Qui-Gon Jinn was not a member of the Jedi Council because he disagreed with their ways a lot of times and butted heads with them. The same issues that Luke talked about with the Jedi Order and The Last Jedi, beat you to it, Michael, possibly, we don't know yet. Qui-Gon was outspoken about those things. And everything he says is a character. You know, concentrate on the moment, be mindful of the moment, be patient, focus. Everything he talks about, he's wise and he's so practical in his ways of how he approaches the Force and uses it. And he's also not afraid to bend a few rules. I mean, he did use the Force to predict, gamble, maybe even partially rig a pod race. We don't know. He was just a cool cat. Qui-Gon's incredible. And if you have not seen the Clone Wars, specifically Season 6, the arc that with Yoda where he goes on the journey and learns to commune with Qui-Gon, who was the first Jedi to become part of the living Force and learn how to commune beyond the grave. Absolutely incredible. You need to watch that. You need to watch the Clone Wars. All of you are awesome, and thanks for the time.
This is for you, Drew.
Oh my gosh, you would. You are not making a good case for this movie.
It's not this movie. It's not this movie. This is from the 60s.
Yeah, well, I can tell.
Can't you just be my friend? Come on.
I am your friend, and in friendship, friends must be honest. Listen, I am glad you love those movies. I really am. I'm glad you love those movies.
Just watch the one that you haven't watched from the cinematic
I
universe.
will one day. I will. I promise.
I don't believe you.
Oh my gosh. All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up here. Is there any just, stray thoughts that you wanted to mention about the movie, but we just haven't gotten around to?
Yeah, I think I have one final wrap-up thought. You see the Phantom Menace as like the butt of a lot of jokes. Like when people talk about it, like if you ever watch The Big Bang Theory, they consistently make fun of the Phantom Menace. And then there's an episode where Leonard gets like chastised by the group because he said Phantom Menace wasn't that bad per se. And, it's on the bottom of a lot of people's lists. I think it's like, other than The Rise of Skywalker, I think it's got the lowest Rotten Tomatoes score. And I just want to say, I get it to an extent. I think people's expectations really, really ruined how they were going into this movie. And to an extent, I think that's also understandable. But at the same time, I loved it. I grew up with it. It formulated a lot of Star Wars for me as a child. And I still love it to this day, and I will happily defend it, eagerly defend it whenever I can.
I will too, man. When someone is around and they're just like, they just start the predictable, prequel bashing or sequel bashing, but, specifically since we're talking about Phantom Menace prequel bashing, it is now instinct for me to be like, well, what about this and what about that and there is so much to love about this movie. And yeah, we criticized some stuff earlier in this episode. You and I, here's the thing, dude. Here's the thing. I love talking to you about movies because, and about Star Wars in general, because dude, you and I are similar in that we don't, there are, and this is fine, but like you got people like Jessica on the podcast and Drew, they just love Star Wars and they love all of it. There's nothing like, they can have little gripes here and there, but generally they're just like, I just love Star Wars. That's great, man. I wish I was like that. But when you love something, you also that doesn't mean that you love everything about them.
Right.
Like that doesn't mean you have to. And like for me and you, I know we fall into that category, and I think that's totally fine. I think there's this whole side of the internet that is super toxically negative, but I also think there's this whole side of the internet that's like, if you say a criticism about a movie, you're a hater and you're toxic. And it's like, no. It's totally, if you just, to me, if I just said I like everything about all Star Wars movies, me saying when a new show comes out or whatever, me saying that was amazing means nothing.
Yeah.
because it holds no weight because I love everything. And so like for me, well, that sounds bad. So like but like for me, I just feel like whenever you like everything, it gives a little less weight if you just say that you like everything. And so for me personally, I think it's totally fine to have criticisms about things. And ultimately what you and I do, I notice when we go back and forth on stuff, is we can definitely get into when we're criticizing things, but ultimately we're criticizing it out of love, and we always come back to what we love.
Yeah.
We always come back. Even when we were talking, I noticed every time we would start, we were getting into criticizing stuff at the beginning of the episode, and I noticed every time we would get into it, we started drifting into things we loved.
I saw
Like
it too.
it was natural, and I'm like, I love that. I love that we're doing that, and I think that's healthy, you know. I love talking about this stuff with you because of that.
My wife pointed out something to me recently, or within the last year, when I write all my reviews on Letterboxd and stuff. She said, "You always do the sandwich method," and I was like, "What? What's that?" Like, just hadn't heard that in a long time. At least I don't think I'd ever heard it before.
Positive,
she said,
negative, positive.
Yeah, she's like positive, negative, sometimes negative, 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 negative,
And
positive.
Yep.
You always bring it back. And I was like, yeah, I just believe in always looking for the good. And my family, my brother and my dad, specifically, my older brother and my dad, so if they hear this, it's fine. They said this to me. They said, "You like everything." And then I said, "No, I don't like everything. I just always," and then my dad would say, "You just always look for the positive." And I appreciate that. But they used to always get on me like, "You like everything." Michael, I want to ask you, do you feel like I like everything?
No.
You've been in group chats long enough.
Absolutely not. I would never say that about you. And clearly your brothers don't talk to you at all. Clearly your brothers don't talk to you at all about anything.
I'm going to send them every half-star review.
Like, dude, like some of the discussions we've had, I feel like sometimes I'm the overly positive one, but then it flips, and then, you know, it depends
on what it is.
Here's the thing. We just prefer talking about what we like. We'll talk about things we don't like, absolutely, but at the end of the day, what fun is that? Like, you should not be known for what you don't like.
Yeah.
You know, and especially as content creators, if I look down your YouTube feed or your podcast feed or your Twitter feed, and everything that you're saying is, I hate this, I don't like that, this is why this sucked, this is how this can be fixed because it sucks. If everything is that, I don't want anything to do with your podcast. I don't want anything to do with your YouTube channel. I'm never going to watch it because what fun? That's not fun. Why would you want to live that way?
That's why I had to stop watching YouTube channels like Cinema Sins, because there are certain movies it is nearly like ruined for me, or things like I didn't notice that I can't unsee. And whereas like something like Pitch Meetings, like it's so tongue in cheek, I can still enjoy it.
Absolutely.
Or how it should have ended. Yeah,
it's masterful.
It's great. Yeah. And you know, I think you and I do this so well too, because we're both creatives. I have a production background. You have a music background.
Yep.
I have like a little bit of a singing background. And you know, you play.
I do not.
You play like in a band, like in worship, and like so. I think when you understand, not that people that aren't creatives don't understand, but when you can really comprehend personally the colossal effort of a production, whether it's music, whether it's a film, whether it's art of like paintings or whatnot, when you understand the creative process and how colossal that effort is, I think that you just come in appreciative that something was even made at all, because it's hard. It's hard.
Yeah. It is. It absolutely is. And you know, so I always am coming from, I am always going to be looking for, and again, like this is just me, I'm always going to be trying to see what the director is going for here, what the writers are going for. I may not like it. Rise of Skywalker, anyone. I don't like the Rise of Skywalker. Every time I watch that movie, which I still do, by the way, every time I watch that movie, I try to understand more what they're going for, and I understand what they're going for. It's not that I don't understand. I want to like what they're going for, and I don't. But like for me, everything Rian Johnson, not everything, but most of the things Rian Johnson puts down, I pick him up because I love him. Like I pick up what he's laying down. I get what he's going for. He's speaking my language, and I love it.
Yeah.
And he's some people it's not their cup of tea, and so that's fine. But I'm always trying to look at it through the lens of what are they trying to say here? What is the creator trying to say here? And when you do that, a lot of times I think you're gonna like it more. Even if you don't like it, you can appreciate it more.
And I think this is seriously my last point. Criticizing fairly, criticizing with intent to, if you're going to deconstruct it so harshly, reconstruct it with like how it could have been better or why it didn't work for you. Not it's just bad and it ruined Star Wars because he's annoying and this and that and this and that. Well, okay, engage with what's there.
Yes.
Tell me why it's bad. Tell me how you think they could have done it better. And if something didn't work for you, help me understand why. Sometimes it's just as simple as like, it just didn't work for me. It just didn't land. Like humor is a big subjective thing like that. But
oh, dude, humor's so tough.
yeah,
absolutely, man. Dude, this is so much fun.
We can talk. We can talk about my favorite ones we've done. I don't know if there's ever been a time where it's just been you and I.
Very rarely, if ever. I don't think we've ever just been us two. Actually, now that I think about it, I think you're right.
This feels like I'm back in Arkansas. We're driving through. You're showing me around, and we're talking about Star Wars.
Yeah, we're just not talking about Last Jedi this time. We're talking about the Phantom Menace. Although we did talk about the Last Jedi a little bit.
It's so much easier to like talk. Not that it was hard to talk to you before, but now that I've like hung out with you in person, it's like even easier to just
Well, you're like a real friend now. Earlier, you were just a virtual friend.
I'm a real friend now.
Oh my God. Okay, dude. So tell us, I know you're obviously involved in a certain point of view in the Facebook group and all that, but also I know you have other stuff. Do you have stuff coming up that you want to talk about?
I have some stuff I'm working on. A good buddy of ours, Lamont English, and I, we have a channel called Nerd City Central where we kind of cover a lot of different nerd things. We actually have two episodes.
I mean, it's Drew. Sorry. Wow. Curry, could you? Sorry, I'm so sorry. I could not believe I did. Can you say that all again because you broke up, and I just want to make sure the audio picks up. So just start with what you're saying about you and Lamont.
Yeah, Lamont English and I have a YouTube channel called Nerd City Central. It's kind of covering all bases, comic book stuff, Star Wars, whatnot. We actually have two episodes we filmed a few months ago that I kind of just haven't gotten around to releasing. It's top 10 superheroes and top 10 supervillains. We'll get to that soon. Those are planning to be released shortly.
Fun.
So it's not just our in-meeting video episode that hasn't got released. I'm sensing a theme with myself. I also have a main channel where I did movie reviews a few years ago. I actually have a Last Jedi one on there I want to refilm because I don't like how I said certain things. I was super sick when I filmed it, and it was a very reactionary take on the film when it first came out.
I'm actually curious to see what you said.
I've sent it to you before, and I think you were like on some of it. And I would actually. I don't
remember.
I plan to re-review it and actually directly reference some stuff in the videos, or in that video. And that's something I'm planning now. I'm kind of working on this setup, just kind of an easier setup so I can start doing movie reviews again on YouTube. It's something I really enjoy and why I kind of log everything on Letterboxd. And another thing that I'm going to get to eventually, the branding is done. Michael, you actually composed the theme for my intro is called Curinator Gaming. And I plan to do, gaming is a huge passion of mine. Don't always have the most time for it, but I want to do kind of like gaming lists. If you've ever watched Watch Mojo or What Culture, they have a lot of gaming videos like top 10 Star Wars games and things like that. We did a little crossover with POV plays and may be some cross-referencing there. But that's everything I have in the docket. A lot of ideas, a lot of planning. Just kind of got to implement it in and get a routine going.
And you and Drew are planning on doing a POV plays pretty soon, right?
Yep, we're in talks for another one. It's just been dubbed. My life was a little crazy. Now his life's a little crazy, so we'll figure it out. Yeah, and I do actually want to get you on one, kind of from a, not that you're not a gamer, but from a.
Oh, I'm not a gamer. You don't have to be nice about it.
you play games, so from like a much more casual gamer perspective, some of the re-releases, I really want to talk about Coder with you. And
are you sure about that?
Yes, because I feel the same way you do.
I don't know if I played it long enough to give an actual balanced take on it. I hate that game so much.
Same.
And honestly, I really don't know if I feel like people just might unsubscribe after that.
That's why we got to have the balance in there with Drew and Jessica and those who love it. But
I know.
anyway, but there's a lot to mine there just from your perspective versus our perspective of people who have like the nostalgia and everything.
Yeah.
So a lot in the works.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay. So for us here at Certain Point of View coming up, we're going to keep doing these prequel episodes. You know, the plan is the next couple of weeks, we're going to do Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith. Obviously, if some crazy stuff breaks on May the 4th, we're going to probably have to do a special episode in there. You know, I'm not sure how that's going to work scheduling wise. We'll figure that out. But yeah, so we're planning all that. It's going to be a lot of fun as we lead up here to Obi-Wan Kenobi. Guys, if you could be sure and remember, I mentioned it earlier, please go like and subscribe on the podcast and or subscribe on the podcast, but also rate and review would really mean the world to us if you could do that. And then also subscribe to all of our social medias. We have a YouTube channel. The link is down there. We have a TikTok now. Go follow that. The link to all of these, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all that's down there in the description. So, dude, thanks for joining me, Curry. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, man. It was a pleasure.
Yes. All right. Until next time, may the force be with you. Always.